a hire to retire job series. So we're going to be recruiting and advertising positions in that from now on, literally from the GS3 to the GS15 level.
Wow.
So
that's really cool.
Yeah. And previous to that, we were hiring entry level positions as 0462 forestry technicians. And then I'm currently in an 0401, which is a biologist, ecologist job series. And that's all transitioning. So going forward, it'll be 0456 from GS3 to GS15.
Wow. So that simplifies it a lot for people interested in looking.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can focus in on that series and find something that aligns with whatever experience they have.
Yep.
And get in the door.
Yeah. And getting in the door is not that complicated. We don't have super high educational requirements, basically a high school diploma and a great attitude and an aptitude to learn new things. A commitment to physical fitness. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like we can start there.
Right.
And we're going to teach you the rest. So
it's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause I've definitely noticed, like, I've never been in wildland fire or anything myself, but just being around people who are, there's definitely like a vibe, a culture, I think, of the people who stick with it. Cause like you said, you gotta want to get into it.
Well, and you have a lot of intense shared experiences, right?
Yeah.
So anytime you do that, you do form a certain bond with the people that you're doing that with that you can't simulate elsewhere, except maybe like within your actual immediate family, like the experiences you might have with your brothers and sisters growing up. And there's, so many stories I can't tell anybody because they won't even understand.
Sure.
And that's a powerful thing. And it could be lonely at times because there's, you got to like find your old hotshot friends to like talk about, some fire you're on, because you would just spend all your time trying to explain it to other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of a unique job in that regard. But you meet a lot of great people and it's not easy. It's not an easy job to do. Right. So if you're around people that are doing it and sticking with it and making it past, there's kind of this imaginary line at year 3 where you're sort of in or out, right? You're either like, this is what we're doing because the commitment level is so high, or maybe this isn't for me and I don't like sleeping on the ground and not being completely convinced like when the next meal is going to show up out here, or just being out in that environment.
Yeah.
So when you're around people that have made that commitment and made those sacrifices, it's a pretty special. So yeah. We have really good stories if you can get us to tell them.
Maybe someday.
About to say I could keep I wish we could talk for like 3 hours.
Yeah. And so along those lines, like if somebody's looking for this job in a national park, not every national park has these jobs, right? Or do they? I'm not familiar.
Not every unit. Certainly the larger mid-size to larger parks. So for example, in our region, we have 14 park level fire programs, and those programs either manage one or a group of parks. So, when you talk about a Yellowstone or Mesa Verde or Bandelier, Rocky Mountain, Dinosaur, Zion, all those units have a program, and pretty robust, so sometimes when you get into like a much smaller unit, like we manage fire for the Little Bighorn. So Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument, it's about 4 hours east of where we're sitting. And we provide fire management services for them, but they don't have any firefighters or any equipment. So it's just sort of an administrative responsibility. And so, we manage their fires through agreements and relationships. So the Crow Agency has agreed to come over, put out any fires if we get any out. But most mid-size national parks are going to have, especially out west, will have their own program. So
cool.
There's a ton of opportunity, investment. The bipartisan infrastructure law I call it National Fire Plan 2.0. It's essentially the next huge influx of investment in wildland firefighting in America. the Park Service is benefiting greatly from that. So all those programs are kind of on the uptick. It's a great time to get your foot in the door and start a career or advance in your career in fire.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I wish we could talk for like 3 hours. I want to just ask you about fire ecology and behavior and what it's like to like get to know it's just like a fascinating process to me. You know, it's like a chemical reaction happening that has its own life and scale. And like you said, behaves so differently, but we do have to wrap it up. So, do you have a favorite story or memory from your time in Yellowstone or another national park, but just something that,
you know, I've been reflecting on that recently, and I couldn't come up with, you know, the one thing. And maybe that's because at this point in my career, in my life, I've learned to appreciate like small things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously we live in a place where we're just kind of surrounded by wonderment, and people have a hard time even relating sometimes to the things we try to describe that happen in our backyard. But for example, literally in my backyard the other day, I went out to chop some wood for our stove and was just enjoying the weekend. And I kind of had a quiet moment, and I stood there and a wolf howled. And it sounded like it was, you know, maybe a mile behind the house. And I thought, you know, it's like noon. That's not typically when I hear wolves howl. Sometimes they come around at night, and I'll hear them when I'm letting the dog out, you know, for the last time in the evening or something. And so I sat there real quiet, and it howled again, you know. And I probably have 100, you know, little stories like that. We're just surrounded by it all the time here, and it's there all the time if you're listening for it, and if you're open to it. And I mean, we're just surrounded by wonderment here. So if you got your eyes and your ears open, it's always there. Go enjoy it.
I think that's the perfect way to wrap up. Thanks for coming and talking to us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's fascinating.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, I would like to. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of What We Do. Thanks again to our guest, John Cataldo. If you like what we do, rate and review the show wherever you listen. Every positive review helps new listeners find the show. If you have questions or want to learn more about a particular job, contact us using the form at go.nps.gov/whatwedopodcast. Thanks.
Welcome, and thanks for tuning in to this USGS Corecast. I'm Marissa Lubeck. The mountainous expanse of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem is known for the native wildlife of its national parks and picturesque private lands. Grizzly bears live in this area of the northern Rockies, making it one of the largest strongholds for grizzly populations in the United States. Recent research by the Interagency Grizzly Bear Study Team provides new insight into grizzly population dynamics and the hazards that influence bear mortality within this ecosystem. I'm here with Chuck Schwartz, USGS biologist and lead of the study team, to discuss these findings. Thanks for speaking with us, Chuck.
You're welcome.
What is the current status of grizzlies in terms of an endangered or threatened species? How are they doing with population numbers, and what does this status mean for the greater Yellowstone ecosystem?
Grizzly bears in the continental United States are listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. They were listed in 1975 and remain listed today. Grizzly bears in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem were actually delisted in 2007, but they were put back on the list following a decision from the district court judge. Bears in Yellowstone represent one of 6 populations in the United States that still exist today. They've been eliminated from about 98% of their historic range, and they only occur in smaller pockets in a few remaining mountainous areas of the western United States. In Yellowstone, there's probably somewhere around 600 grizzly bears, and the population, since it was listed, has been growing at a rate of about 4 to 6% per year from about 1975 through today. They now reoccupy habitats in the ecosystem where they were basically eliminated in the late 18 and early 1900s.
Previous grizzly studies have suggested that human activity can affect bear populations in certain ways. What new findings about grizzly hazards have come from your recent research, and how much of a role do people play?
One of the things that we know for grizzly bears in general, and this is pretty consistent across all of North America where grizzly bears or brown bears live, is that if you're a bear and you're no longer dependent upon your mother for care, so excluding cubs and yearlings, there's about a 90% chance that your cause of death will be directly associated with humans. Bears die in accidents on roads. They're killed in defense of life or property when they get into trouble with people. Agencies go in and remove them if they're in conflict for livestock killing or damaging property. And so what really drives bear demographics is humans. What our studies show, and they repeat some of the previous work, is that roads in developed areas, for example, impact grizzly bears. Essentially what we did was we took radio-collared bears, we looked at where those bears lived, and then whether they lived or died during our period of study. And took the bear's home range, and essentially what we showed was what we call human disturbance variables strongly influence whether a bear is going to live or die. And so bears that live in very secure areas that have little or no road density or very few developed sites in the form of campgrounds or lodges or facilities that have attractants for bears. Bears that live in areas that don't have these human developments typically have very, very high rates of survival. As the amount of human development increases, it becomes more hazardous, and they tend to die at higher rates. Some of the new findings that we have shown is that ungulate hunting also is hazardous to bears. We know, for example, that an important food of grizzly bears is ungulate meat. And so in one way, when a hunter kills an elk and cleans that elk, bears use that as a food source. So that brings bears into close proximity with hunters, and on occasion they do get into trouble. They are killed in defense of life. Rural development in the form of ex-urban or outside of urban areas also increases the hazards for bears. And so when we have large ranches, for example, that have been maintained as open space for agriculture, but the human activity on that land is very low, when those lands are developed into ranchettes divided into 40-acre parcels that each get a house, it also becomes much more hazardous for grizzly bears to survive in areas like that. There's a saying that biologists have is a fed bear is a dead bear, and so these kinds of developments just increase the probability. As far as natural hazards are concerned, is cubs and yearlings, which are dependent upon their mother for care, face a different suite of mortality agents. And what we typically see is if you're a young bear and you're going to die, you're more than likely going to die from natural causes. There's starvation or predation. And in the instance of starvation, in some years when we have poor food production, these little cubs don't get enough nourishment and they starve to death. The other thing that we see is more predation. And in the world of bears, cubs and yearlings are vulnerable to being preyed upon by large adult males.
You mentioned that you used years of bear tracking information from collared bears to come to your conclusions. Can you tell me more about how this information was acquired?
The grizzly bear study team is responsible for monitoring the grizzly bear population in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. And one of the ways that we do our monitoring is we capture and radio collar a sample of bears. So we trap every year and we try to catch a sample of random bears from the population. We then put radio collars on those individuals and we track them through time. That's what allows us to get a very clear understanding of how bears use the environment, what factors influence rates of reproduction and survival. So we can look at a female in the fall and determine whether she's weaned her offspring, and then determine the following year if she's produced a new litter of cubs, how large that litter might be. That's basically how we track the demographics of the Yellowstone bear.
Can such bear mortality data from the past contribute to insight on future grizzly populations? Can it be used for predictions?
We can't really predict, but we can project what the future might look like based on information from the past. And as long as systems don't change dramatically, those projections provide some insight and guidance to managers on what they might need to do or consider for maintaining a healthy bear population in the future.
How do grizzly population dynamics in the somewhat remote Greater Yellowstone ecosystem affect people and places on a national level?
The Yellowstone ecosystem is one of the last remaining intact temperate systems in the continental U.S., and as such, it has a large amount of wild lands where we still have healthy populations of large carnivores, including grizzly bears, black bears, gray wolves, cougars. And one of the things that we know about bears is bears are very popular animals. There's millions of people that come to this system every year, and one of the reasons they come is with the hope of getting to see bears and wolves in a natural state. And so maintaining these large systems like that in an intact fashion, I think, is important to people in our country.
Thanks for taking the time to speak with us today, Chuck.
Thank you.
This podcast is a product of the U.S. Geological Survey, Department of the Interior. I'm Marissa Lubeck. Thanks for tuning in.
Triple Arches is probably one of the most recognized features along the Going to the Sun Road. Built to span several large gaps in the mountainside, engineers had originally planned to create a large retaining wall and use huge amounts of fill to build up the roadbed. Designers came up with a more elegant solution by constructing a series of 3 arches to span the gaps. It is a reflection of the care and dedication evident throughout the original construction of the Going to the Sun Road. Probably, as you've been driving the road, you really didn't notice most of the bridges, guardrails, and structures along the way. That's because the original designers of the road worked hard to create a road that blended with the environment rather than competed with it. As you continue on, however, give them a second glance. Even simple culverts in many locations are beautiful creations constructed of the same multicolored rock from the surrounding mountains. The Going to the Sun Road is one of 6 National Historic Landmarks in the park and one of a very few roads in the country to make that list. Today there is a massive rehabilitation project in progress along the entire length of the Going to the Sun Road. Engineers and contractors are working hard to ensure that the historic features of the road are maintained while creating a road that meets modern safety and traffic requirements. It's a challenging job and will take several more years.
I know I had a number of moments early on working over at the St. Mary Visitor Center. As you kind of get to the edge of the building and the building is no longer blocking the wind, I've had things that just got sucked right out of my hand.
That's Debbie Smith. She's in charge of, among other things, the St. Mary Visitor Center.
You know, it's also funny, we'll often get these high wind warnings. I think it was for 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts and maybe even as high as 85. And I've told people that don't live around here that that's our weather forecast, and they're like, oh no, that can't possibly be right. You know, you couldn't possibly have wind that high, but we do.
How does wind affect people's experience when they're visiting the St. Mary area?
Partly it's just about the sort of obvious things like making sure their tents don't blow away and making sure when you're eating lunch that you have, you know, a hold of everything, that that you brought with you. And then there's also being able to see what the park is like, and whether it's seeing St. Mary Lake on a day that it's really windy with huge whitecaps. Even sometimes at the St. Mary Visitor Center on really windy days, we'll get the spray from the lake hitting the windows on the side of the building because it's just blowing it that far.
And the visitor center is not right on the edge of the lake there. The wind has to carry that spray over a quarter mile for it to hit the building. When people are hiking in St. Mary, what are some of the effects of wind that they might see in the plants or the landscape?
One would be flagging on trees. When you see trees that basically all the branches on the windward side are broken off, or they're kind of deformed, so that side that's facing the direction from which the wind is blowing, and then it resembles a flag because all of the branches are just on the other side. Besides
the practical side of not letting things blow away, do you think you've learned anything from the wind there?
I think a lot of it is just learning about this place. And I mean, there's, the obvious challenges that it presents to people like you were mentioning, but I think also the wind is something that makes the east side of the park really beautiful, and it makes it this diverse place and dynamic and harsh and wonderful all at the same time. And it just adds to the experience, and it creates the amazing place that we have on the east side.
How does wind affect life in your area? Does it invert umbrellas, sculpt dunes, or drive wildfire? Maybe you hardly think about the wind at all. The way you interact with wind is largely dependent on where you live. In Tornado Alley, wind is a life-altering force. But in other parts of the country, it might be more of a curiosity. In this episode, we're going to look at two elements that, perhaps like the wind, have been eliminated as a major factor in many people's lives, but that still find a home in Glacier National Park. First, you'll hear a story about the grizzly bears in the park, and then about our dark, starry night skies. Welcome to Headwaters, a Glacier National Park podcast, brought to you by the Glacier National Park Conservancy and produced on the traditional lands of many Native American tribes, including the Blackfeet, Kootenai, Salish, and Kalispel people.
We're calling this season The Confluence, as we look at the ways that nature, culture, the present, and the past all come together here.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Michael.
And we're both rangers here.
In this episode, we'll be in the St. Mary Valley.
St. Mary Lake is the second largest lake here and home to some of the most breathtaking scenery anywhere in the park.
I mean, the view from Wild Goose Island overlook is even on Montana State driver's licenses. It's so beautiful.
Really, it is?
Yeah, I mean, look at your own. It's like the shimmering thing in the background that they check.
Yeah, there it is, Wild Goose Island.
So we're headed to St. Mary because it is a great place to look for experiences that, over time, have grown harder and harder to find anywhere else.
Yeah, Glacier is in many ways the last best place for experiences that the rest of the world may once have taken for granted, but have since faded away.
Today, we're going to focus on two of those experiences. One that it helps to get up early for, and one that it helps to stay up late.
Yes, something for the early birds and the night owls.
Now, one thing that makes Glacier special is that we are home to an abundant and diverse range of wildlife.
We have 71 species of mammal, 276 different birds, 6 amphibians, and even 3 reptiles live here.
And I'm curious what your experience has been, Andrew, but as an interpretive ranger, it seemed like half of the questions I got from visitors were logistical, like where should I hike, is this campground open, etc. And the other half was about wildlife. Do you have moose here? Yes. Where can I see a mountain goat? That sort of thing.
Definitely. You could make someone's whole trip by just pointing a spotting scope at a herd of bighorn sheep.
But that excitement for wildlife encounters can go both ways, because some people are thrilled at the prospect, but others are actually scared. Glacier's home to predators like mountain lions and wolves, but the critters most people think about when they're here are bears.
We have a lot of bears here.
Both black and grizzly bears.
As of 2018, the population of grizzly bears for the whole Northern Continental Divide ecosystem, of which Glacier is a small part, was estimated to be about 1,050 individuals. Of these, about 250 to 300 would live in Glacier.
Wow.
Some bears are going to spend part of their lives in the park, part of their lives outside of the park. And the black bear population in Glacier was thought to be about 600.
I've heard that that's more grizzly bears per acre than anywhere else in the lower 48. But how do we even know that? This place is huge. It's like finding 1,000 needles in a million-acre haystack.
Yeah, it was actually a pretty big undertaking to get those numbers. I actually talked to Tabitha Graves, the scientist who was involved with a lot of this research.
Hi, I'm Tabitha Graves. I am with USGS. I'm a research ecologist.
Not only is it a massive area to survey, you have to figure out how to distinguish individual bears so you don't just keep counting the same ones.
And I know with birds, in these sort of situations, biologists will catch them and mark them with a leg band, some other animals with ear tags.
Yeah, but capturing and marking hundreds of grizzly bears would be super expensive and time consuming. Sounds very dangerous and would probably seriously disturb the animals. So the scientists used some really cool technological advances to measure the bear population in a different way.
Back in 1998, my predecessor in my job, Kate Kendall, started doing research using genetics of bears. She put out strands of barbed wire around some trees in the woods with some stinky lure in the center of it, and found out that grizzly bears would go in to smell that. When they did that, when they walked over or under the barbed wire, a few strands of hair would be pulled out. And in that hair, there's DNA in the hair follicle, and from that you can identify individual bears.
With the DNA captured in a hair trap, you could tell how many distinct individuals were around. This initial experiment proved the concept, and then they did a much bigger study in 2004.
Before we got a population estimate, it was the first population estimate that had good confidence intervals and was fairly precise. That was 765 animals was the point estimate in 2004.
From there, they took the survey even wider, and I cannot overstate how big of a project it is. They were monitoring a ton of hair traps across the whole Northern Continental Divide ecosystem. Michael, do you want to take a guess at how many rub sites they were monitoring for bear hair?
Well, I imagine they tried to put them all over the park in the different regions. I'm going to say maybe like 500.
We had across the whole ecosystem, there are around 4,000 rub objects per year.
4,000? Holy crap, that's a lot.
Yeah, and Tabitha told me that this genetic data is useful for a lot more than just those population surveys.
That's the cool thing about having genetic data is that you can not only identify individual bears, but you can actually see who's related to who.
For instance, they found
that one male grizzly bear that had 101 descendants. So that included his offspring, his grand cubs, and his great-grand cubs.
So how's the population doing now?
It actually seems like it's still growing, even in Glacier National Park, which Tabitha said is good news.
Well, we were actually surprised that the population was still growing in Glacier Park because the protections have been so strong here for so long. We thought it was possible that it would just be completely stable. Because bears have larger home ranges, it could be that changes that are going on the Blackfeet Reservation or the Whitefish Range are also influencing the number of bears here.
Wow, that's amazing. But it makes it all the more frustrating that I haven't seen any in the park this summer. I saw one really early in the spring, but once summer started, I just haven't been able to find them.
Have you been out looking for them?
Yeah, I've driven all over. I did a ton of biking and day hiking. I've gone backpacking collectively for nearly 20 days so far, and no bears.
Wow, that's pretty bad luck.
So as a last-ditch effort, I thought I'd go to St. Mary. Along St. Mary Lake is a stretch of open meadows called Two Dog Flats, a place where in the past I've seen bears before.
Yeah, me too. It's great habitat.
And a common piece of wisdom is that if you want to see wildlife, it helps to get up early. So this morning I left the house around 5. Really early. Let's get this over with.
That's especially true in the summer when it gets hot in the middle of the day. Wildlife like bears are going to be more active around dusk and dawn.
Exactly. So with that in mind, I drove over to St. Mary from the west entrance, a nearly 2-hour drive to make it there before sunrise.
Before sunrise?
Yep.
You don't have the reputation of being
No, I'm not very much of a morning person.
There it is.
But this was serious business. I can't have gone the whole summer without seeing a bear.
Seriously.
And that's a promising sign. I just drove through some bear poop. So I parked on a roadside pull-off, got out my binoculars, and scanned the horizon.
And binoculars will definitely help. At a distance, it's pretty hard to tell the difference between black and grizzly bears.
So there's 8 species of bears in the world, and brown bears, grizzly bears, Kodiak bears are all the same species. Grizzly bears and black bears are different species, and some of the differences between them are grizzly bears are more oriented towards digging. Black bears climb trees more.
One of the most common misconceptions is that black bears are all black and that grizzly bears are all brown. The truth is we have brown black bears, black grizzly bears, and they're examples of both species that are cinnamon or blonde here in the park.
So don't rely on the fur. Look for physical characteristics. Tabitha mentioned that grizzly bears like to dig. That means they have huge shoulder muscles that give them a really pronounced hump on their back. Black bears, on the other hand, spend a lot of time climbing trees, which gives them really strong hindquarter muscles and gives them a nice big rump. And there are other little things to look for too. Grizzly bears have longer claws, black bears have a straighter snout. But to use any of this information, you have to find a bear in the first place, which was something after an hour I had not managed to do. Well, the first thing I've seen that isn't a bush is a deer bounding through the field.
You didn't find any bears there?
No.
How long did you wait?
3 hours.
Oh, wow.
I'm parked like on top of a pile of bear poop. So I know that they come through here, but there's been nothing. But I didn't want to throw in the towel that easy. Just a few miles away, the trail to Otokomi Lake started, a trail I've also seen a bear on. So I decided to try my hand at seeing a bear while hiking. And with very high hopes of seeing bears earlier in the summer, I interviewed one of Glacier's resident bear experts. Could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, Michael, I'm Bob Adams, and I have been here in Glacier as a seasonal ranger for specifically 44 seasons before this.
Bob is a legend in Glacier. After serving in the military, he came to Glacier on a whim in 1966, went on a day hike to the Sperry Chalet, and wound up meeting his now wife, Carolyn.
And I did a lot of hiking up to Sperry. In fact, I packed a half-gallon ice cream solid with dry ice and packed it up to Sperry. I think that's the only reason that Carolyn and I ended up together. I don't know.
That ice cream?
The ice cream, you betcha.
More or less, he's been here ever since, wearing a variety of hats. He's staffed entrance stations, campgrounds, done law enforcement, but has spent most of his time as the lead bear management ranger in Many Glacier.
I haven't counted up exactly the number of years, but it's been about 25 to 30, I would say, as bear management ranger at Many.
A job that often entails direct contact with bears, even deciding if a trail needs to be closed for bear danger. But to hear him say it, the job is mostly about people.
My emphasis is in meeting the public and trying to educate the public every day on the trail about bear safety, certainly, and safety around large animals, and safety in regard to other environmental hazards of the park.
I figured he'd be the perfect person to ask about how to safely see a bear on trail.
The ideal situation, in my estimation, for seeing a bear, black bear grizzly, is when it's way more than 100 yards away from you, up in a hillside or down in a valley. It's a pretty exciting experience to get that chance and have a few minutes to stop and look and get out your binoculars.
Seeing wildlife from a safe distance is obviously the best scenario for all involved. Seeing animals up close can be a different story.
Moose are very large animals, maybe 1,000, 1,100 pounds with a brain the size of a walnut. I mean, nothing could go wrong, I'm sure. So, anyway.
If you're in its personal space, any animal, or person for that matter, will respond more dramatically. So, keeping wildlife at a distance is step one. In fact, park guidelines state that you should stay 25 yards from herbivores like deer and mountain goats, and 100 yards from predators like bears.
Which is easier said than done. On a lot of trails in the park, it's pretty rare to be able to see anything, let alone a bear, from 100 yards away. Twists and turns in the trail mean trees and rocks can block your view.
Exactly. And while it's never ideal to be up close and personal with a bear, the worst case scenario is to surprise one, something you can easily imagine happening around a blind corner. So the best thing to do while hiking is to regularly let them know you're there.
To minimize the likelihood of encountering a bear or surprising a bear is to make noise when you travel. That means using your voice to call out. It's not conversation. People say, oh yeah, we're talking. We go, okay, sometimes your conversation carries quite a distance if the wind is blowing, but usually it does not.
Coming through. Bears have an incredible sense of smell. They are believed to be able to smell things from over a mile away, but their sense of hearing is about as good as ours.
I, in Glacier Park, am just obnoxiously known for my presence, I guess. Every 50 yards or so, I'll shout out, especially around a blind corner where there's high noise from wind or waterfall or stream nearby. You want bears to know you're in the area because bears' natural inclination is to move away from people. Even though they're accustomed to our presence, they have no interest in really getting up close and personal with us. So give them that opportunity.
So making noise is a must, even if it feels a little silly sometimes.
Making noise has helped me avoid surprising bears, but it won't always prevent you from running into them.
You're right. Sometimes even if they know you're there, you might still see them.
We get reports all the time, every summer, every week, in the visitor center. Oh, bear was coming toward me. It was charging me. It was lots of different things in their perception, but the bear usually is just walking toward them, and they are petrified, and you and I can understand how that might be if you've never been around a bear, maybe even in a zoo.
Yeah.
This is daunting. And if the bear, for example, is walking on the trail toward you, or it's coming up behind you on the trail, and that's when they really get excited because they are sure the bear is after them. It's very personalized.
Yeah.
That's not the case. The bear is moving where it wants to go. The trail is the easiest way for the bear to travel.
One time, a few years ago, I was leading a ranger hike up to Avalanche Lake, and we were all stopped talking about the trees, and someone very calmly tapped me on the shoulder and said that there was a black bear coming down the trail. It made total sense. Why would the bear want to bushwhack through the brush when there's a trail that's clear right there?
Precisely. And Bob has advice if you ever find yourself in that situation.
What we as visitors and hikers should do is move slowly away from the bear, back up slowly. And if you find a spot on the trail that's safe for you to get off on the downhill side of the trail, not over a cliff, but where you can walk down 5 or 10 yards and just stand still, the bear is going to walk past you. That's what the bear is going to do. It may turn and look at you. You may feel more comfortable, and it's perfectly okay to get out your bear spray and have it in your hand, but do not plan to discharge it at the bear. That's just going to stir things up. There's no need to do that.
That's how it's happened in my experience. Just moved my group off as far as we could, and the bear just strolled right past us and kept minding its own business. But he also mentioned bear spray.
He did. Bear spray is the #1 recommended deterrent for diffusing or preventing bear encounters. Easier to use and shown to be even more effective than firearms. But what is it?
Well, it would be a dangerous mistake to think of it as a repellent, like mosquito repellent. You do not want to spray it on yourself. What it is a high volume, high concentration, high pressure can of what's essentially pepper spray.
And having been on the wrong end of an accidental discharge, it is not fun to deal with personally.
This stuff is very effective if used properly.
Emphasis on if you use it properly.
Because most people do not take the time to learn a couple of things about bear spray. One is when one should use it and how.
So if you're visiting the park, you should get bear spray, but you should also head to a visitor center to learn how to discharge it.
Yeah, during the summer, we would lead twice daily bear spray demonstrations at the Apgar Visitor Center, using a can of inert spray that doesn't have the pepper in it to show people the ropes.
There are some basics like knowing you've got 5 to 7 seconds worth of spray in there and knowing where to aim.
You just have to aim it correctly. You want to aim it down so that it hits the ground in front of the bear that's moving toward you, so it rolls up into the bear's face. You don't want to aim it straight at the bear's face because it comes out in a cone-shaped pattern. Half of that bear spray will go over the top of the bear's head. You don't want that. And you don't want to do this when the bear is 30 yards away or 20 yards away. It is not effective.
Armed with that knowledge, you can prepare for an instance when it would be needed.
If you surprise a bear, which is the most likely scenario for getting hurt by a bear, especially a sow with cubs, coming around a blind corner, and you have not been making noise or whatever, it didn't work, you're at 20 yards from the bear or less, and suddenly that bear comes at you. That bear is moving 44, 45 feet a second. I mean, you don't have time to think about this. While you are aiming at the bear's chest and at its paws, you're going to discharge that spray. You can give it a short burst as soon as you get that out of your pack. Give it a half second or so if the bear is at 20 yards. Within a very short time, it's going to be on you. Discharge the whole thing in its face. I mean, just hold it down.
With a face full of bear spray, that bear is going to scamper off in search of a quiet place to wait out its new whole head hangover. In a little while, they'll be just fine, and you'll be long gone. The stuff just works.
You have to have that bear spray somewhere where you have actually gone through the physical motions of putting your hand on that spray and ripping the Velcro. You should be able to get that out in 1 to 2 seconds. It can be done, but you need to practice that.
I have never once needed to use my bear spray, but even still, I had Bob's advice in the back of my head on the way to Otokomi Lake. Making plenty of noise, being observant, and keeping my bear spray handy. But I still hadn't seen any wildlife. That is, until I rounded the corner, got to the lake itself, where all of a sudden, just 20 feet from me, a fish jumped and splashed in the creek.
Oh, come on.
Kind of scared me, what?
You knew what you were implying had happened.
Okay, believe me, I was disappointed too. I ate lunch there for 30 minutes, eventually started down to the car with my proverbial tail between my legs. I didn't see any wildlife on the hike out either. Only a few other hikers going the other way.
Well, don't beat yourself up too much.
Yeah, well, something else Bob had said was reverberating in my head the whole hike out. No matter how badly I wanted to see a bear,
Most people are going to walk up any given trail at Mini Glacier or elsewhere in the park, and they're not going to see a bear, either a black bear or a grizzly bear. They just aren't.
just because they're more common here than elsewhere doesn't mean you're going to see one. And even if more times than not you don't see one, you always have to be prepared in case you do. Because normally, you see them when you least expect to. I see people stopped. Sure enough, I had given up all hope as I began my long drive back home. I mean, I'd been out for nearly 12 hours. But before I could even drive out of the St. Mary Valley, I noticed cars parked at a roadside pullout.
Oh?
And I thought back to one more thing Bob had mentioned. Bear jams.
And a lot of them are just happy to see them from the roadside, which creates some other problems. Bear jams.
And not jam like jelly, right?
No.
The piling in of cars along the road. And
Seeing a lot of cars parked in the road or at a pullout with no trailhead is usually a sign that somebody spotted an animal. And animal sightings are exciting, but these bear jams can be problematic.
preventing bears from even crossing the road to get to water because there are 30 to 40 cars parked solid.
People essentially acting as a barrier between the bear and food or drinking water.
Exactly.
People out of the cars and advancing toward the bears. I mean, it's hard being a bear, I guess you could say.
With a roadside bear sighting, if you're the one driving and you spot it and nobody else has seen it yet, what should you do?
Well, I can tell you what you should do, perhaps, and I'll tell you what you're going to do. I know what you're going to do. You're going to stop, and you're going to call the kids to the window, and if it's no more than that, at least you're going to be there clicking from the car. And, of course, once you do that, other cars pile in, and then the thing goes pretty quickly to chaos, or it certainly can. What you should do is take a look, slow down, take a look, keep moving. That's what we'd like people to do. It never happens.
But amazingly, that afternoon, everyone had pulled safely off the road into a large pull-off that didn't interfere with traffic in any way and had binoculars trained up the hillside where over 100 yards away, 2 grizzlies were foraging.
Really? That's awesome.
We came across someone else who had spotted him when he was further down the mountain.
Yeah.
Oh, that's huge, isn't it?
I mean, it was the perfect bear encounter. They were enormous, for one. Like, the one bear was scarily huge. They were far away, and we weren't bothering them in the slightest.
That's really good to hear.
And people there were clearly absorbed by the experience. One couple set up a spotting scope to share with everyone so you could see them really clearly. And many were seeing a grizzly bear for the first time.
I was looking, I thought it was going to be dark. Me too.
Well, the back is dark.
When he turns
and
the
front is light.
But he really
But as fun as it is, to make sure I didn't add to the parking problem, after I got a good look and talked to the few people, I got back in my car and I kept driving. Now, I spent all day trying to find a grizzly, and I was mesmerized when I did, along with everyone else at that roadside pull-off. But as we hinted at earlier, seeing a grizzly bear hasn't always been that rare of an experience.
Most people know that the range of the grizzly was vastly larger. I think it stretched back almost to the Mississippi River if you go back 300 years or so.
Through 200 years of hunting and poaching, the grizzly population of the lower 48 was reduced by as much as 99% compared to 1800 levels. Today, thanks to conservation efforts like the Endangered Species Act and even protected lands like Glacier, they're no longer on the brink of extinction, but they are still far less common than they once were.
And as exciting as it is to find one today, bears aren't just here for us to see. This isn't a zoo. They play a really vital role in the ecosystem. Here's Tabitha Graves again.
They have effects on lots of different parts of the ecosystem. Because they dig for roots a lot, particularly in the spring and the fall, they're actually digging up the soil, and that's actually a kind of nutrient cycling. They might eat huckleberries, for instance, in one place, and then because they can move such large distances, being large animals, they are really important for seed dispersal.
They regulate prey populations, break down logs. Really, the list goes on and on. Their role in this ecosystem is enormous.
The fact that we not only have them here today, but that thousands, millions of us each year can share this place with them speaks to the strides we've made in bear management, which, as Bob put it, used to be, well, different.
Oh, bear management has changed quite a bit. Oh, will you indulge me in a little story here?
Go right ahead. A story from Bob's first season as an employee in 1967.
We road patrol rangers would cruise through the campground in the evening because they invariably had bear problems because there were no bear-proof cans, garbage cans. They just had regular 50-gallon galvanized cans, and people left their gear, their stoves, their food, their ice chest out.
So bears could get into these things and learned that they had food in them.
You can find out where the bear is because you hear people shouting and banging on their pots and pans. Hey, bear, hey, 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 bang, 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 bang. So we know where the bear is, so we cruise up. And we had a really fun tool in those days. Crazy, we could have died using this, but we had a shaved-off wooden baseball bat behind the back seat. We'd jump out with a baseball bat and shout at the bear and run up and whack it in the butt. I'm not kidding you. With a baseball bat, a black bear, when it's sitting there at the table, going through somebody's ice chest.
Yeah.
And wail on it, and that bear would take off like a rocket and go up the nearest tree. And we'd say, okay, job done, we're moving on. Guess what? 15 minutes later, bear's down working the campground again. Now, that was bear management in 67.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
No way. That's crazy.
I lost it. But this technique of bear management is dangerous for more than just the ranger carrying the bat. Visitors were injured or killed by bears that started to see us as a source of food, and more bears had to be euthanized too for this behavior. Understandably, things are different now.
We've definitely changed quite a bit.
Bob covered a lot of ways that we can alter our behavior in bear country, but how can we affect bear behavior?
Yeah, well, thanks to the research of Tabitha and a lot of other scientists, we understand bears a lot better today than we did during Bob's story 50 years ago.
Yeah, we did a study that we called Nature versus Nurture.
And it used that same genetic data that we discussed earlier.
We were trying to understand how grizzly bears become habituated. What we did is we looked to see whether their mothers also had a history of conflict and whether their fathers also had a history of conflict. We found that offspring who got into trouble were more likely to have mothers that got into trouble. And this is consistent with what we know about bear life history. Young bears stay with their mothers for a couple years. So there's an opportunity for them to learn how to get into trouble, basically, or how to learn those associations of humans and food in their early years.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Cubs with habituated fathers who get into food, etc., they don't become habituated, but the cubs that have habituated moms do?
Exactly. And what this means is that since a bear's father doesn't raise it, its only contribution is genes, the behavior isn't inherited.
Okay, so cubs must be taught this behavior by their moms.
Yeah, exactly. So Tabitha told me that this realization emphasized how important it is for visitors here to properly secure their food.
Yeah, our research really highlights the need to prevent food conditioning from happening in the first place because there could be kind of these longer term effects that could be passed down from mother to offspring. So it's really important to put your food away, make sure that you're storing all of your attractants safely at night inside of a hard-shelled vehicle or in a bear box in some place that keeps the foods and attractants away from bears.
Wow, talk about the butterfly effect. I knew it could affect our bears today, but if it gets in the hands of the paws of a female bear,
she's going to teach it to her cubs and they'll teach it to their cubs and so on. So it's really important that we always secure our food and trash. It can affect generations of bears.
So as we've learned this information over time, the park's bear management policies have evolved. given the same situation this summer, you probably wouldn't use a shaved off baseball bat.
No, we wouldn't use the baseball bat. Absolutely not.
Sawn-off baseball bats have given way to a variety of safer and more effective tools that rangers can use to teach bears to keep their distance from us. There's cracker rounds, beanbags, rubber bullets, and also infrastructure set up to know how and when to close trails or campgrounds to prevent encounters in the first place. But like Tabitha mentioned, the most important tool that has kept our wildlife as wild as can be in a place with 3 million visitors a year is food storage.
All foods, all things that are associated with foods kept away at all times except mealtime. That's the mantra.
And the result of all of this is that today in Glacier, you just don't see grizzlies in a dumpster. You don't see bears in the campground running off with bratwursts or breakfast pastries. You see them up on a hillside, foraging for huckleberries, chasing ground squirrels, sliding down snow. And that difference is important.
Oh, that's huge.
So the next time you come visit, read up on our food storage regulations. Buy, carry, and learn how to use bear spray, and embarrass your friends and family by making noise on trail.
Good morning!
Because you might not see a bear. Heck, you probably won't see any. But what if you do? After all, where's the fun in a guarantee?
After the break, our final story. Each episode, we seem to cover at least one thing that, like this podcast, wouldn't be possible without the support of the Glacier National Park Conservancy.
With the help of some friends over there, we got the number of Executive Director Doug Mitchell and decided to call him up out of the blue to ask about these projects.
For this episode, we wanted to ask about their support of astronomy programs.
Glacier Conservancy, this is Doug.
Hey Doug, it's Andrew and Michael here.
The Mad Podcasters. How are we doing over there today?
We're doing pretty good, but we've got an issue. We were hoping you could help us settle it. We've been arguing all day about whether the morning or the evening is better here in Glacier National Park.
All right, well, Michael, make your case.
Okay, so I think that the evening is better because there's nothing worse than having to get out of bed early in the morning, and it's a lot easier to stay up late. And the sun doesn't even set, it seems like, till 10 p.m. at some points in the summer, so that's why I think it's better to stay up late.
All right, very good. Andrew, counterpoint?
Well, I've got to say the morning is the best time to be out in Glacier National Park. You get out early, the sky is all lit up with the sunrise. You really can just get going on your day and enjoy all the beautiful scenery. In the evening, it's cold, you're sleepy, can't see much. So, in my opinion, you got to get out early when you're in Glacier.
Wrong. Michael, you are the winner. No doubt about it. For those of my age group, that is a Saturday Night Live ripoff. But we love the evenings here at the Glacier National Park Conservancy because there's so much programming that goes along with the night skies. So evening is the right answer.
Woo! Told you.
Well, I should have known Doug would come down on your side since the Glacier National Park Conservancy funds so many dark sky and astronomy programs in the park.
Yeah, I'm going to be holding this over his head for the rest of the day.
As you should. You are the king. Long live the king.
All right. Well, thanks for the time, Doug. We'll talk to you later.
Of course. Thank you, guys. Call anytime. Cheers.
Yep. Bye.
And we're back. One of the things I think is so unique about this place is that people have a chance to interact with wild animals that are in their natural habitats. It's an experience that would have been really common for our ancestors, but to most modern people, it's just really not part of life anymore.
That's interesting to think about. For thousands of years now, knowing how to interact with large carnivores that could kill you would have been an essential skill, but at some point it just stopped being part of most people's lives.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about these situations that were part of what it was to be a human for hundreds and hundreds of generations. So long that knowing how to respond to them is literally inscribed in our DNA. One of the amazing things about national parks, in my opinion, is that they connect us to universal ideas of what it means to be human. Visiting a place like Glacier National Park allows you to see and feel the same things that millions of other people have seen and felt here over thousands of years.
I think another example of what you're talking about is looking at the night sky and the Milky Way. For millennia, the Milky Way was just what the night sky looked like. Humans that looked up at the night sky saw the stars and planets and galaxies. In fact, when our nation chose its flag, stars were used because no matter where you lived in the United States, the night sky was a universal experience. But since then, for most people, that experience has faded away. So I think you should check that out.
Well, I have been wanting to go stargazing since the night skies are so well preserved here, but I'm not sure I can really get myself to stay up late enough.
I mean, it's worth it. The park has an observatory even now, so there's more you can see. You won't regret the missed sleep.
All right, I'll do it. Armed with 2 cans of iced coffee, some high-energy music, and my microphone, I drove across the divide from my APGAR office to Glacier's observatory at the St. Mary Visitor Center. There, I met Lee Rademacher, the ranger who spearheads Glacier's astronomy program.
Hey Lee, good to see you.
As he started up the observatory and aimed the telescope, I asked him some questions about Glacier's night sky program. First of all, what do we mean by dark skies?
Dark skies are more than just a night sky. Dark skies are really about a sky that lacks light pollution. It's stray light that shines up into the sky that creates a sky glow, and they are getting rarer and rarer.
Okay, so light pollution is extra light that is making the stars less and less visible?
Yeah, that's right. And having dark skies is actually pretty important.
So in the biologic realm, basically every single organism that lives on the surface of this planet has evolved with a day-night cycle. Our internal workings rely on that day-night cycle to reset the clock. And it's not just, things with eyes. Plants are also impacted by light pollution or by a lack of dark skies.
All right, that makes sense. Plants and animals are used to dark nights. If light pollution makes the night brighter, it can throw things off.
Yeah, but there are cultural impacts too.
Culturally, dark skies are really important. Throughout time, societies around the world have relied on the skies to help tell stories, to help know when animal migrations are going to occur, know when seasons are coming. The skies really help them kind of predict the world around them.
For Lee, the dark skies are one of the best parts of working in Glacier National Park.
To me, dark skies are an opportunity to discover. It's an opportunity for things like mystery and awe.
And sharing that sense of discovery with visitors is really rewarding.
It's really kind of fun because a lot of people that come to the park have never had the opportunity to experience truly dark skies. They often are in a sense of disbelief about what they're actually seeing. And on more than one occasion, people have thought that we were tricking them when we were showing them Saturn through a telescope. They're just kind of blown away and in true disbelief. That's a really fun experience for me to be part of.
Glacier National Park has made a massive effort to expand the opportunities for visitors to experience dark skies here, all of which culminated in Glacier, with Waterton Lakes National Park in Canada, being designated the world's first transboundary dark sky park.
The process of becoming an international dark sky park was pretty extensive.
The park started by hosting night sky interpretive programs. Then, a lighting inventory was conducted, looking for lights all around the park that unnecessarily shine up into the night sky. These lights were then replaced with less polluting and more efficient lights.
And we were able to do that with the help of the Glacier National Park Conservancy.
In the midst of this process, the building we find ourselves in right now, the Dusty Star Observatory, was constructed.
We're inside a Sky Shed PodMax 12-foot dome observatory. So it's that kind of classic observatory shape that you've seen in pictures. And in the center of the building is a big steel pier, and sitting on top of the pier is the telescope mount. This mount controls where the telescope points.
As a dark sky park, Glacier has a lot of astronomy programs for people to attend, mostly in the months of July and August at the APGAR and St. Mary Visitor Centers.
And we have astronomers set up that can help people experience the night sky using telescopes, binoculars, and other, even just kind of, sitting out on a lawn chair and looking up and having an astronomer point different objects out to you that you might see with your naked eye.
As we talked, the skies darkened, and by about 11:30, the Milky Way emerged, and stars began to carpet the entire sky above us. It was time for the fun part. Lee pointed the telescope at the planet Saturn. I should note that the telescope in the Dusty Star Observatory is a type called an astrograph.
Which is a fancy word for a telescope that you typically don't look through with your eye. And it focuses its light down through the back of the scope, where we have a camera that is able to project or send these images off to the computer.
Which is why you'll hear us referencing a screen rather than an eyepiece. I carefully watched as Lee aimed the telescope.
So right now, Saturn has popped up on the screen, and right now it just looks like a really bright white oblong shape. I'll see if I can fine tune it a little bit to make those rings come out.
In no time, the planet came into focus.
So cool though, like you can very distinctly see the rings.
While Saturn was super cool, I was really hoping I could convince Lee to show me the comet Neowise, which was at its most visible the night I was out there. That particular comet only comes by about every 6,800 years. So it's really no exaggeration to say that seeing it in this telescope would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. After a few minutes of adjustments, Lee got the comet squarely in the telescope sights, and it didn't disappoint.
So now we've got the nucleus of the comet on the left side of the screen and the tail stretching out to the right.
Oh my god, yeah, that's really impressive. He talked me through what I was seeing here.
So the Neowise is a fairly green hue and actually has a greenish ion trail. Every comet has two tails as it approaches the sun. One is the tail kind of made up of the dust and gas that's kind of blasted off of the core of the comet. And then a second one is an ion tail that's formed from the interaction between the comet and the solar wind. And so the ion tail is kind of this greenish blue, and then the comet itself is more of a kind of a greenish emerald almost color.
Wow. I'm so jealous. I told you it was worth staying up late. Did you get a picture?
We did. Here, check it out.
Oh, wow. You could really see the tail and everything. We should put that on the park's website for listeners to see.
That's a great idea. We can get it up there. By now, as we looked at the comet, it was getting really late. The excitement of seeing the comet had given me a rush of energy, but I knew it wouldn't last forever, and Lee had to work early the next morning.
I think it may be time to call it a night on this fairly successful image. I have a 7 o'clock shift tomorrow.
Yeah, I gotta drive back to
You can enjoy the stars on any clear night in Glacier, even if you're not able to make it to an astronomy program. All you really need is a clear view of the sky. Lee recommends bringing some warm clothes, maybe a lawn chair, and a pair of binoculars can help too. And he said that if you can't make it to an event, with a smartphone you can
download an app and point it at the sky and learn a little bit more about what there is up there.
If you decide to check out the stars while you're here, and you definitely should, it was well worth staying up for, it's important to think about leaving no trace. With stargazing, Lee reminded me that leave no trace principle 7, be considerate of other visitors, means taking an effort not to shine bright lights where people are stargazing. If we take these simple steps to leave no trace, we can make sure that there's continued opportunities here to be part of this ancient human tradition of viewing the night sky.
Today, when you look up at the night sky, you're not just seeing the stars. I think you're really connecting to that shared humanity and that shared culture.
Sounds like you had a great night. I'm really thinking now about all the ways that people and our lighting clashes with the natural dark skies and how it hasn't always been that way. So I called Darnell Rides at the door, and Amskapi Pekuni, our Blackfeet tribal member that I met in another episode, to learn more, and she pointed out the observatory's name. Dusty Star is actually a Blackfeet term for a comet.
Those are comets. We call them dusty stars. It's just kakatoos.
The concept of a dusty star might have been especially relevant this year with the comet Neowise. My coworker Andrew got the chance to go look at that in the St. Mary Observatory.
Oh, how awesome.
Oh yeah, that makes total sense after seeing it. Comets are like just dusty stars.
Yeah, and Darnell told me that the Blackfeet language is a very visual one.
You know, it's interesting to think about. The last time the comet Neowise passed by Earth, some 6,000 years ago, Blackfeet people were probably looking at it up in the sky and calling it by that same word.
The things we talked about today, seeing grizzly bears in the Milky Way, are just a few of the countless unique experiences you could have here.
Yeah, you can also find here some of the last alpine glaciers in the contiguous US, endemic plants that occur nowhere else in the world, and opportunities for solitude and quiet that are becoming increasingly rare.
I mean, heck, if you could prove there's a better place on Earth to pick huckleberries, I'll eat my shoe.
These are opportunities for people to connect with the natural world that may disappear forever if we're not careful.
So it's our collective job now to make sure the types of experiences we talked about today, like seeing a bear or viewing the stars in the night sky, are possible for people for another 6,000 years.
I think that if we can learn to come together as a community, we can do it, but it's going to be a big job.
Yeah, but I think we're up to it. That's our show for today. If you're interested in learning more about bear safety or astronomy programs in the park, you can find links in the show notes for more info.
Thanks for listening.
Headwaters is a production of Glacier National Park, with support from the Glacier National Park Conservancy. The show was written and recorded on traditional native lands. Andrew Smith and Michael Feist produced, edited, and hosted the show. Ben Cosgrove wrote and performed our music. Alex Stilson provided tech support. Quinn Feller designed our art. Renata Harrison researched the show.
And narrated the credits.
Lacey Kowalski was always there for us. And Daniel Lombardi and Bill Hayden were the executive directors. Support for this show comes from the Glacier National Park Conservancy. The Conservancy works to preserve and protect the park for future generations. We couldn't do it without them, and they couldn't do it without support from thousands of generous donors. If you want to learn more about how to support this podcast or other awesome Conservancy projects, please go to their website at glacier.org. Of course, you can always help support the show by sharing it with everyone you know, your friends, your family, your dog, and also leave us a review online. Special thanks this episode to Debbie Smith, Darnell Rides at the Door, Tabitha Graves, Bob Adams, and Lee Rademacher.
From Yellowstone National Park, this is what we do. I'm Jake Frank.
And I'm Brett Rayburn.
Hi, Brett.
Hey, how's it going?
I am great. How are you?
I'm good. I had a good weekend.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Hey, how are your pipes in your house doing? You like that transition? Have you flushed your toilet today?
My pipes, I think they're good. Do you know something I don't that I don't know?
No, I just wanted to. That was the best transition that I could come up with.
That was terrible. I'm not gonna lie.
So no, what I have a trivia question. I want to ask you.
Okay.
All right. So Yellowstone, we're a big park, 2.2 million acres, 4.5 million people roughly visit the park every year. We have a lot of infrastructure in the park that's hidden to support all that visitation. Part of those systems are water and wastewater systems in the park. So, how many combined between the making clean water and then making dirty water clean? If you combine those two systems, how many of those are in the park?
Like pipes?
The number of
systems
of total systems. Yeah. So you don't have to. It's not like miles of pipe or anything.
Okay,
it's just
that's
like
what I was
a complete
trying
system
to anticipate.
because they're located all throughout the park. So if you were to count the total number, how many are there across the park?
15.
There are 23 wastewater systems and 21 water systems. So a combined 44.
So it wasn't even close.
It's a lot. It's and this is like something that I had no clue about until I started, working with the facilities team to document all of our infrastructure, from like the GOA projects and putting in money to improve our infrastructure. It is unbelievable how much infrastructure there is, and it's all hidden. Like no one sees it, but it's by design. It's all, behind the trees and whatnot.
So do we know how many feet of pipe there are in this park? I really want to know that now.
I have no idea, but maybe
thousands.
Our guest today, Jason Murphy, he's the utility systems facility manager for our water and wastewater systems. Do you know that answer?
The exact number off the top of my head, I do
centimeter
not.
To the millimeter.
No, thousands though.
Yeah.
Between water and sewer, it's thousands.
Yeah.
There's over 500 manholes. That one sticks in my head from from that spec sheet. But
wow,
yeah,
that is crazy.
That's a lot. Water and sewer.
That's a lot.
Well, speaking of water and wastewater and manholes, how are you today? Another great transition.
It is a very great transition. I am fine.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us today.
How are your pipes?
Our pipes are good.
Yeah.
Toilets are flushing.
Great.
That's a win. So, why don't we just kind of dive in? How did you get into the Park Service? Did you start in the Park Service, or did you even before then? Just how'd you get here?
My first Park Service job, I applied as a summer seasonal in 2001, and I was picked up as a wage grade 3 garbage truck operator, and not the driver, but I rode the garbage truck. We had ride-along garbage trucks in Canyon then. We had about 300 of those swinging bear cans, and I rode the garbage truck for that summer, picking up garbage in Canyon.
That seems like a fun job.
It was a very fun job.
So like on the outside, like you're the one hanging on the outside. That is cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the one that all the little kids want to be when they grow up.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, we've taken that away now. They have mechanical arms that do that, but it was a very fun job.
They always got to ruin all the fun stuff. Yeah. So
can't hang on the back of a truck driving around town.
Yeah.
Anymore.
There's somebody probably got seriously injured, and then So, how did you find that job? How did you hear about, how did you even know to apply?
Friends at University of Montana who came down here and worked for YCR as seasonals.
Okay.
And they were like, you should apply for these jobs. And
so are you from the area, or did you go to school here, or?
We were living in Missoula at the time. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, but we had moved out in 98 to Missoula, and just met some folks that, had been coming down and working seasonally for the Park Service. And the housing was a very big draw at that point, that you could get a job that came with housing.
Yeah.
So
in Yellowstone. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
between hanging off the back of a garbage truck and your current position, there's probably a few jobs in between those two things.
Few jobs in between. Yep.
What, you want to walk us through that?
Well, my father was in the utility stuff, so I kind of grew up with some of that, at least in the collections and distribution side of things. So I'd known about it. And then in between that summer season and kind of, still as a seasonal, working for, doing the ski school thing in the winter and then coming back. It was, even back then, it was recruitment and retention for water and wastewater operators was tough. People came and went pretty regularly, even going all the way back into the late 90s. So I kind of saw that there was a way to get in there then. I did then do a little stint for the Department of Defense in Germany, working for the Army for a few years in early 2002 through 2004 or 5 when we came back. And I've been here ever since then. And it was kind of that on the job training. You could get and do some correspondence courses, grab some certifications, and then get in the door that way. And that was pretty much the easiest way to get a permanent job in Yellowstone.
Yeah. So we've done a handful of these interviews now, and the consistent thing is like, I think John Cataldo said, move at the speed of opportunity, is that it's just kind of being in a place and being willing to learn some new thing and then take advantage of it. So
I didn't leave.
Yes, that is another way. It's just plant your roots. So, okay, so in your current job, so as the utility systems facility manager, do you have a typical day and or a time of year, or like what does your job look like?
Well, let's be honest. There hasn't been any quite typical days since June 2023.
What happened then?
There was a flood.
Oh, yeah, there was a big flood. Yeah.
Yeah. So been pretty wrapped up in that project, getting the wastewater plant up and running here in Mammoth, which it's been up and running since July of.
Yeah. So
did I get the date mixed up? Was that 22?
22. Yeah. So for
Um,
folks that don't know, we had a big flood in June of 22 that washed away one of our roads. And in that road was a wastewater line that would take our sewage from Mammoth out to the town of Gardner where it was processed. And then when that line severed, we basically had to build a temporary wastewater facility in Mammoth.
We resurrected a facility that was last used probably in the late 60s, within a matter of 48 hours after we lost the main line down to Gardner.
It was like a zombie facility.
Yeah.
Came back from the dead.
Mm-hmm. Got a lot of chainsaws
Spooky.
and weed whackers out, and thanks to YCC and a bunch of other folks and fire crews for getting some stuff cleaned up, and we were able to utilize some existing infrastructure actually to great success for a while, to keep the community of Mammoth here. And then over the course of that year, I got those dates mixed up. So June 2022 to July 2023, build a biologically processing wastewater treatment facility here in Mammoth.
It's been
that
crazy
wasn't on your radar either. It was like just like, oh, by the way, I know
Yeah,
you
not
have
on
this
the
to do,
radar.
but this is a new thing that you have to do starting now.
Yeah. And, living in Lower Mammoth, looking down and seeing that thing go up and just how fast, there's always speed bumps in the road, but I mean, with the government building things like building a wastewater facility in like less than a year isn't a typical timeline.
No.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that's been your primary thing to take care of is here in
being on site. There's a few other folks like Molly, our park civil engineer, who's very critical in getting that up and running. We got great support from Denver Service Center, and then the contractors and stuff that stepped up to get it all going.
So with, all of the things that you're mentioning, is there like a skill set that you have that you found that has like kind of allowed you to be the most successful in your position?
I feel like I'm pretty adaptable, flexible, kind of got to roll with the punches. And you need to be creative and use what you have around you. Like I said, there's some folks here who have been here for a while. So when the flood happened, we reached out to a few people that have been here for a while, and they were like, if you do this, and you got to have a good network of people to get all that information across and then implement. So being able to strategize quickly and then implement that plan. And that's kind of the general thing with utilities is stuff's going to happen and you're going to need to figure it out kind of on the fly. And you don't always have those parts on the shelf, or even whatever it is. If it's a water main break or something like that, you've got to really be able to react quickly, but yet systematically and approach to keep everyone safe and to get the job done.
Yeah, it's one of those things too that's like everyone's looking at you, waiting for you to figure it out too, because they're like just holding their pee over there, waiting to use the toilets again. Like,
yep.
It's a high stress.
I think
situation.
The park had a great team response too from the whole flood. That I don't think anyone was holding it too much.
I had my wag bags ready.
Yeah, right. You bust out the groover. We're going on a raft trip. But no, that's pretty much it. And then generally work a lot with outside partners, EPA, rural water associations for both Montana and Wyoming, Wyoming DEQ. This position here, and with Molly and the civil engineer for the park, we work a lot with Denver Service Center, and it is kind of that kind of position where you're balancing between the regulatory agencies. Wyoming is the only state in the nation that did not take primacy over drinking water, so we get the fun of we work with EPA for drinking water Region 8, and then Wyoming DEQ for wastewater. But yeah, and Wyoming DEQ also has everything to do with construction and permitting and things like that. So,
well, that's also the benefit. But the majority of our infrastructure is in Wyoming, right? Like we do have a little bit like that does bleed into Montana, but the majority of it's Wyoming. So, do you have a favorite part of the job? Like what do you wake up and enjoy doing? You know,
I like pumping sludge.
Yeah,
that's kind of like my favorite part of when I get out of the office or those kind of things. Pumping sludge is very rewarding.
Do you put that on like the calendar on the days that you get to do
We're
it?
doing
It's just
it a
like
lot
pumping
more
sludge.
than we ever have now with this new treatment facility. So,
it's be a good
it's
day.
the closure of the wastewater loop. So
where does the sludge go?
Right now, it's going to the compost facility at the landfill in Logan.
Okay,
and they'll use it. They use it in the landfill. They mix it with wood chips, and most of the municipal wastewater treatment facilities in the area, Livingston, Bozeman, even Three Forks, and some of the other ones, they all use the compost facility too. So they use it in the as they layer things in, and when they close cells and in between intermediate stuff in the cells, they put that layer of that material. They mix it with wood chips and other things like that.
So if pumping sludge is your favorite part of the job, what is your least favorite part of the job?
That's a loaded question. I mean,
what are some of the challenges that you face in your job?
That's a better way to ask.
Yeah.
I think right now recruitment and retention is definitely a challenge. Finding certified operators nationwide is a challenge. I think through that whatever happened a couple of years ago, we don't want to talk about the pandemic, but
yeah,
we did lose a lot of that knowledge base and some of those older operators, and we're struggling as a profession nationwide from coast to coast.
Well, and you mentioned it even in your, when you were at Canyon doing garbage, that you noticed that it was hard to recruit and retain people back then. Is that just like, does anybody have an idea as to why that is? Is that just like the hazards of the profession, or is it like?
Yeah, and I think, it seemed kind of clear back then that, people with families, being someone who's experienced that, staying in the interior of the park and that remote duty station is difficult.
No pun intended.
No pun. Yeah. DOODI. That's just a struggle, even when we had children, and that was kind of my exodus from the interior after being out there for 8-9 years was, you want to be home, and that makes it difficult.
Can you kind of go into why, like, what are some of those difficult things that you have to
school?
Yeah. I mean, what does that look like, getting your kids to school?
We didn't.
Or homeschooling.
Yeah, that was not an option.
Yeah.
I could see like kindergarten, we could do blocks and, music and all the fun stuff, but no.
Teach me trigonometry.
My wife worked for the park for years, for 20 years, homeschooled. Yeah. So we decided not to do that. She was here in Mammoth at the time. And I was able to come into Mammoth and work out of the plumbing shop for about 10 years, doing some HVAC stuff and just all kind of project work and things like that before this position came up.
So now that you're, in your facility manager position, and I'm guessing you supervise a handful of people, with all those challenges and trying to recruit and retain people, I mean, why do you stay here? What keeps you with the National Park Service?
Well, I've always loved being here. That I feel like that's, as far as recruitment goes, when you're looking for people who want to be here, you want wherever they are, whatever job it is. If you're in, Michigan or Florida or North Carolina, I would think anybody who you're recruiting for any job, you want the person to want to be where they're at least at that time. So I've always wanted to be here. I was in love with the park. Be honest, I was in love with the skiing in the park for a long, long time. I still am, but you just don't have that kind of time anymore. I was going to say, that
sounds past tense.
Well, life, adulting,
kids,
there's adulting. So yeah. And just the idea of, and I always thought this, it might sound a little cliche, but you get to do some of that mission statement stuff, the stewardship model. Take Canyon Wastewater Treatment Plant, for example. It's the only treatment plant in the park that discharges directly into the Yellowstone River. So I always thought, even going back to 20 years ago, that you had a part of that kind of responsibility and stewardship. And plus you're doing a little bit of science. There's some science to it. And I just thought that was the best part of working in the park. And you can only, I was never going to be in REYP or anything like that. So it was just, for me, it was part of that. You could see that in the mission.
Yeah. Well,
relate to it.
And, 2001 is when you said you got your first job here.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, between then and now, has there been some point in your career that you kind of identified as like a turning point or a defining moment that you're just like really stands out to you?
I think there's a lot, and not to talk, the flood was definitely one last 2 summers ago now. I think a defining moment was, getting that first permanent job, because that was a roller coaster. And then even progressing up and moving from the interior to Mammoth. That was a big deal.
And that, yeah, because that's like the whole, everything other than work, it is improved by being up here, not the logistics of with your kids and, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Was when the skiing stopped.
Yeah.
So I guess in some ways improved and in some ways.
Fun, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I do get that. And that's a cutting edge. It cuts both ways. Like, it's super fun to be in the interior in the winter. You have access to all this stuff, but then on the flip side of the coin, you got to get on the snowmobile and drive to the store. So
I think it's important though, that we make sure that people know that the interior life in the winter is not, it's manageable. You if you don't make a grocery list now, if you come and you work in the interior, you might want to start working on your grocery list.
You can't forget eggs.
You can't forget. Yeah. There's just a little bit, there's another level of logistics, and organization that goes to it. But I loved it. And that was a hard part of moving.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like I was abandoning something that, I really wanted. I always wanted, even when we were in Germany working, I was always like, oh, okay, this is great.
Yeah.
Europe, we're traveling.
Eating schnitzel.
Yeah. We get to go to Croatia on our day and on our trips or wherever it was. But I was always like, all right. And then the supervisor at the time, he would call my mom. Be like, is he coming back? No, he's not coming back yet. And so when we decided to pull the plug, it was just a phone call. It was like, okay, I'm ready. Come back. And they welcomed us back here with open arms and a lot of mosquito bites. Mary went down to the south entrance. There's not a lot of mosquitoes in Germany. That was the one.
Yeah. Not a lot of bugs in general, probably.
So, we're mentioning like recruitment, retention, finding the right kind of person. So say that there are people listening right now that are interested in this type of career. If they were to try to find this job on USA Jobs, what are they looking for? Like, is there a job series for like that you're hiring for, or typically that,
we're hiring for its utility systems repairer and operator. I believe the series is 4742.
Okay.
And we do hire. We have some higher graded positions that are open right now that would come with, being more certified at the beginning, but more and more we're opening positions that are entry level positions. We hope to do, in this recruitment push, we hope to do some other things. I don't want to, say things and never be able to implement them. So
yeah, this is recorded. So then
right,
it's like, you said you would do this.
Say-do gap is huge in this one.
Yeah.
But I think we want to get creative and work and talking to Wyoming Rural Water last Friday, and just reach out and try to come together with other organizations that are having the same problem and try to just pull together and work through this. Cause this is a nationwide kind of thing for us. In this field.
And it's one of those things, it's one of those professions that no one notices it until something isn't going right.
Mm-hmm.
And when it is going wrong, it's really bad.
Right.
Like it's like an emergency type of a thing. So yeah. Do you have any advice for people, like if they wanted to get started in this, like if they have their certifications and everything, it sounds like they would just apply for a job. But
Correct.
if somebody is brand new, like what do they start with?
I think you could start with, like this is going to get edited. Even that quick Googling, like Water Environmental Federation or American Water Works Association, starting with that, I feel like a lot of things just start with that basic research, and then reach out. Every community has people that do this.
Everyone has wastewater.
Everyone has water and wastewater, and I'm sure you've noticed somewhere driving around your town, you've seen somebody in a truck, Department of Public Works truck. Yellowstone is has municipal features. We operate, we plow roads, we make water, we do wastewater. I would encourage people to start there. Go to a water and wastewater district board meeting, meet people, get in that way with your local folks. There's a lot of people right now nationwide trying to start intern programs or apprenticeship programs or things like that. I would be really surprised if your local high school biology teacher or doesn't have or knows some way to get a hold of somebody in your community that knows the water and wastewater guy or gal.
Yeah. And going on a tour, like I went on a tour of a wastewater treatment plant, and it was like fascinating. Like I didn't really know what I was getting into, but it was like, I want to know more about how this actually, do you have like a really nutshell presentation of how that process works?
Yeah, it all depends on
fascinating.
On the treatment facility, right? Or whatever, if it's for wastewater, if it's a biological or a mechanical treatment facility, water, what the source is it groundwater, is it surface water, those kind of things.
So pick one, and like it sounds like we have all the flavors in Yellowstone.
That's kind of an interesting.
Yeah. So
way
if you were to say,
it.
What's the most complicated one? What's the wastewater facility here that's giving you the hardest time, and like kind of explaining?
Well, I think we deal with some of the aged infrastructure that gives us a harder time. I think some of the ideas behind, you turn it off and you turn it on every year, that wears on a system more than the thought of maybe, well, you only use it 6 months out of the year, it should last double the time.
Yeah.
No. And just in the learning of bringing this facility here in Mammoth online, it's a more modern treatment process than we have anywhere in the Park Service. Teton, we went down to Teton. Patrick Larson down at Teton has an MBR there at Moose that they've had probably maybe inside 10 years. We went down there and we talked to him and we learned about some of that. And I think what was good for us is we had that Great American Outdoors Act push already going. So we had a lot of this stuff we had a year under our belts of planning for building Old Faithful and Grant Village and Canyon. So we had some of that experience with the engineering firms already to kick this off the ground.
And one of the things I learned, going out with you guys is when you said aging infrastructure, a lot of our facilities were put in like 40 or 40 plus years ago, right? And what's the average lifespan of a facility?
Well, I think that the average lifespan of a facility is if it was maintained. And we've struggled with that for a whole host of reasons. But I struggle with the idea of putting a number on it.
Gotcha.
I don't want to sit, it's going to last for 50 years. It's going to last as long as we need it to last if we take care of it.
Yeah.
We're lucky here. We're not in a situation like a municipality that's going to put in another 15,000 homes. So we can cap our capacity for the most part. So we don't need to worry about having another 1 million gallons of capacity when we we might do some lodging updates and infrastructure stuff like that, but we're not going to have those same issues like a municipality, like a Bozeman or a somewhere else.
But even like, so if these facilities were put in 40 or 50 years ago, visitation was much lower, and were the facilities kind of built that there was room to grow them, or are we kind of now?
We run everything, even from my time here, everything that's on when it's on. I always go back to the campgrounds were full in 2001 when I showed up, and the lodging was full in 2001 when I got here, right? Like, those plants were operating the same way then as they are now. They're on max, 14 hours a day or 24 hours a day. They're running at that capacity that they were designed.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, admittedly, so this is an anecdote that I like to say. When I was a little kid, you'd always drive by the wastewater plant and you'd get the smell, and my mom's like, "Oh, that's the wastewater plant." And in my mind, I thought it was like the pipes dumped into like a plant with like leaves. And there was like a plant that just like ate
absorbed
all of the waste. And I was like, wow, that's a really cool plant. Like just like trees, they take the carbon dioxide out of the air.
Well, plants don't like tomato plants grow out of the sludge because we can't like process tomato seeds or something? Or am I just like, did I dream? That's a weird dream to have.
I think I've heard something along those lines. But I mean, wetland treatments is a very real process.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not far off.
Thank you for not making me feel so silly.
No. He's winking at us across. You guys can't see it, but he's like, we'll make Jake feel better.
Yeah. So the last question we like to ask everybody before they go is, do you have like a favorite story or memory in Yellowstone or some other national park that's just like a fun thing to share with our listeners?
I just think I was really lucky for the better part of 12 years to have my family here, raise my kids here in the park, and just have that experience. I feel blessed to have gotten to where I'm at today, and I look forward to, taking the challenges head on and getting to where we're going to go tomorrow. And then all those great powder days at Canyon over the course of 9 winters are always in the back of my head.
Do you think your kids like fully grasp the fact that they grew up in like that's not normal to get to grow up in Yellowstone?
Yeah, I think I do actually.
Cool.
Yeah, I think they do. As much as a teenager can grasp.
Yeah, I mean,
she didn't have a phone then, so yeah.
Those are those like icebreaker things that I think they can be like, I grew up in Yellowstone,
Yeah.
Good story.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time and to talking about water and wastewater with us. It's one of those things that getting to go out with you guys and your team and seeing what you do, it's really very interesting. Also, I think everyone in Mammoth and the hotels and everybody that's here, the fact that we can even be here because you guys got that facility up and running as fast as you did, we really appreciate that as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you. It took a lot of people.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of What We Do. Thanks again to our guest, Jason Murphy. If you like what we do, rate and review the show wherever you listen, because every positive review helps new listeners find the show. If you have questions or you want to learn more about a particular job, contact us using the form at go.nps.gov/whatwedo. Thanks for listening.
Yellowstone is the world's first national park, and everybody in America is very proud of that. But there's been a struggle to figure out what a national park should be like. And probably one of our founding philosophies is it should be natural. It should be a natural system that functions the way the Earth did before humans altered it. And so it was written into our policy that we're going to restore and protect natural systems. And the early managers of Yellowstone didn't really know what natural looked like. So we've been struggling towards natural our entire history, and that definition has evolved. And that definition, the modern one, now includes you need to have natural predators. And so we tried to eradicate them. Wolves, cougars, coyotes, bobcat, lynx. We did that in the early part of the 20th century because we thought that was the ideal. We didn't have a complex mindset about policy in terms of natural. And so we restored wolves because the Park Service policy changed towards what is a natural system that includes large carnivores like wolves. We also had the Endangered Species Act come about as law in 1973 that says we cannot wipe some species off the face of the planet. And wolves are very much under that umbrella too. So the best answer as to why wolves were restored to Yellowstone is it makes it a natural system. It was the law, but finally people wanted it. The public's view of nature has changed and evolved. So creatures that were previously considered bad, scapegoats, have now had an image alteration, and a lot of the public demanded that we bring some of these animals back. Well, most ecosystems are best when they're balanced. And I think it's safe to say that Yellowstone, without wolves and other carnivores, now keep in mind, cougars were also eliminated and they came back on their own, and bear numbers declined, and that affected the balance of the ecosystem. And so ecologists refer to this as biodiversity, but emphasize the word diverse. Having a lot of different kinds of things at moderate numbers is better than having a lot of any one thing. And prior to wolf recovery, we had a lot of elk, we had a lot of coyotes, and we had very little things like willow and aspen and songbirds and beavers. And so the entry of wolves and other carnivores, because bears have increased and cougars have come back too. So now we're a carnivore-rich system, and we've restored that top layer of the system. So really the simplest way to look at it is all the parts of the system now are in place, and they're interacting differently. And I hesitate to use a value judgment-laden word, but it's healthier this way than we had certain parts of the system before that were absent. So all those things functioning together has made nature look like it used to before we started managing it. And those management intentions were good. We just didn't know enough about it. And so we have this makeover in Yellowstone now. We've brought carnivores back, wolves being the most high profile, and it's changed the way Yellowstone looks. Elk are perhaps the most controversial and talked about aspect of wolf recovery. And that's odd because elk are a species unto themselves, but many people equate Yellowstone with elk. That's arguably our most famous species. They've been debated and studied since the late 1800s. Elk are iconic in the West as a huntable species. And so elk are very important, and wolves eat elk. So do cougars, so do bears, so do coyotes. A lot of things eat elk. People eat elk. And so the system in many ways hinges on elk. So what wolves and other carnivores do to elk is very important. And very simply, prior to wolf recovery, predation pressure by natural carnivores was very low. No wolves, no cougars, few bears. Bears were here, but their numbers were lower. And that caused the elk population to grow to very large numbers. In fact, a lot of ecologists and scientists criticize Yellowstone for having too many elk. The effect of elk was so dominant on the ecosystem that they suppressed other things. To the point where managers outside the park were hunting elk at high rates to try and depress this burgeoning elk herd. With our wolf recovery in the mid-90s, with natural cougar recolonization, with growth in the bear population after decades at low numbers, predation pressure has increased, accompanied by the management practices outside the park where people were hunting elk. All of these things together have caused the elk population to decline. And the Park Service considers that a success story. And that's hard to describe to a lot of people, especially some people who can't understand how less is more. We live in a culture where more is always better, but fewer elk brings about that ecosystem balance, that biodiversity that the Park Service seeks as natural. And that's a very important goal for the Park Service. And so having these large carnivores, and Yellowstone may be the place in the world that's got, in North America, that's got the best mix of diversity and density of large carnivores, that will affect the elk population to lower. But we're arguing as a Park Service that that's more natural or healthier, which is defined as better for the system. And this is a very hard thing to convey because a lot of people liked a lot more elk. It's better hunting. And so this is a complex relationship. But wolves have contributed, not solely, to a decline in elk. Perhaps the most commonly asked question about wolf recovery is that, did we reintroduce the wrong wolf? And this is a long answer, so I'll try and make it as short as possible. Our naming of nature is an artificial system developed by Carl Linnaeus, a Swedish monk in the 1700s. And I don't want to criticize Linnaeus, and he did a great job. But essentially, it's an artificial system putting names in parts of nature that might not be actually different things. But there are different things in nature. You have plants and animals, and they're different, and we can call them that, and it works. And his system really works very well until you get down to the very finest levels of naming, of distinction. That's the subspecies level. You have species, and then below species you have subspecies. And wolves are the worst example of the subspecies concept. The leading wolf biologist in the world does not believe that subspecies even apply to wolves. And why is that? You get different subspecies, and originally there were 24 different subspecies of wolves. Now there are 5. It's constantly being reduced. And of course, this prominent wolf biologist thinks there should be none. But how do you get different kinds of things in nature? Different populations become isolated so they no longer interbreed. When they don't interbreed anymore, the genetics become different. When the genetics become different enough, they become different things. First subspecies and then species. Wolves always get around, and it's very hard to isolate 2 populations of wolves. Very hard. Nothing stops a wolf. Not a mountain range, not a river, sometimes not even oceans. The wolves here immigrated to Asia and back. They're very good at getting around, so you don't get much isolation. The best genetics show that wolves in Mexico to wolves in the Arctic are on a continuum of change from south to north. So there's no place we can go in and say, this group of wolves is different from that group. That's a genetic analysis. And the Mexican wolf can interbreed with the Arctic wolf very capably. So did we reintroduce the wrong thing? No. Were the wolves that we put here slightly different from the wolves that existed here 100 years ago? Probably. Nature's always changing. We looked at the weights of the handful of wolves, 31 from Canada, which is a very small number, and they were slightly larger than the wolves that existed here 100 years previously, 6 to 8% larger. That is well within the natural variation of wolf size across the continent. So despite this frequently asked question that these Canadian wolves are unnaturally large and they're therefore at a very big advantage to killing these elk because these elk aren't used to such a large predator, of all the arguments not to have wolves, and there are some good ones, they're tougher to live with, that's an absolutely good argument. The idea that we put something in here that's exotic or different is perhaps one of the weakest. Wolves do not kill for sport. That is a fact. Why? The average wolf weight, if we threw all the wolves together, males, females, subadults, adults, pups, is about 100 pounds. The average cow elk's 500 pounds, the average bull elk's 750. They risk injury or death. When you attack something 5 to 7 times as large as you, that ain't a fair fight. So they risk tremendous injury or death trying to take something on bigger than them. So they prey on things in a risk-averse fashion. They only kill what they need to exist, and we've got great data on this. Will they kill more than they can eat? If the risk equation balances out in their favor, they will. What does that mean? Late winter, belly deep snow, elk are weak, they'll kill more than they can immediately eat. But underline the word immediately. We had a situation in March 1996 where one pack of wolves killed 5 elk in one day. And they cycled back and ate everything on those 5 elk in over a 2-week period. Now they were competing with ravens and coyotes and magpies and eagles because they were trying to consume it too. Because as everybody knows, the bounty of nature is shared and competed for. So they went back and they tried to eat it all. But that is common predatory behavior. When you can get an edge, when you can get more food. Humans do this too. When oil is cheap, we burn more oil. When wolves can kill more elk, they kill more elk. Because why? That equals more pups. But they only do it when they can. So on average, wolves do not kill healthy elk. It's too hard. If all you can eat are healthy elk, the wolf population goes down. Wolves make their living on vulnerable elk. And so their population waxes and wanes based on vulnerabilities. And hard winter is a vulnerability. But so are things like age and health status and condition, bone marrow, all these different things affect elk vulnerability. And that's what's important to wolves, and that's what they're shooting to take advantage for. Remember, there's no creature in nature that doesn't look for advantages. So no, they do not kill for fun, but yes, they will kill for more what they can immediately eat, but if left alone by humans, and this is very important, I get sent emails all the time showing an elk killed by wolves and not eaten, but there's tire tracks, there's human tracks, there's horse tracks. The wolves were bumped off the kill. People found the kill to take a picture of it. Left alone, as we've demonstrated here in Yellowstone, and we've seen it more, killing a couple elk sometimes is fairly common. If they're not disturbed, they'll eat everything. They won't do it immediately because they have a capacity on their stomach. So very, very important point. Killing for fun or bloodthirsty reasons is not true. People should not be afraid of wolves. There are 3 primary reasons that people are against having wolves on a shared human landscape. One is they compete with us for wild prey. That's valid. That's true. 2, they occasionally kill livestock. It's rare, but it does happen, and then that's valid too. The 3rd reason is there's a human safety threat, and that is largely overblown. During the entire 20th century in North America, there were about, and I'll be off by 1 or 2, 20 attacks on humans. None of them were fatal. All of them dealt with habituated animals, usually fed food. And we're very concerned about that in the park. When you feed an animal food, it loses its natural fear of people and it become dangerous. But very different for wolves compared to bears or cougars. They never attack a person on their first encounter with a human. So the first time a bear encounters a person, a sow with a cub, or a cougar encounters a person, they might attack. And bear fatalities and cougar fatalities are much greater than wolves. Wolves always have to overcome their natural fear. I don't know where it comes from, but they have a natural fear of humans. They've got to overcome that. That's usually through habituation. Typically food conditioning, but not always. Of those 20 attacks that were recorded, some were habituation just through exposure, from being around people in a non-threatening way. So wolves have to overcome this natural fear, and then they may attack. 6 of those attacks were bites from Alaskan pipeline workers feeding them part of their lunch. So 6 of those 20 attacks were from that. Since that paper was published, there have been 2 fatalities, and both of those wolves probably were food conditioned. Some were dump wolves, and others lived around a logging camp. And so those animals, those are examples of wolf fatalities. So it can happen, but it's extremely rare and less likely for other carnivores. A big question that's often asked about wolf recovery was, you said the wolves are just going to stay in the park. And I'm fine with wolves in the park. I just don't like them out because when you leave the park, it's a very much a human-dominated landscape. That's another misconception of wolf recovery. The plan written to restore wolves to this region never said the wolves would stay in the park. And it's different outside the park because wolves are managed by the states, and so they have different policies and objectives than the park does. The park generally stated management philosophy is preservation, which means no use. That's not a pure definition because we do manage other species. The state's objectives are largely conservation. That means wise use. Both of those objectives are fine and they're determined by people, and neither one is better than the other. They're just different. And so naturally they clash a little bit because there's no wolf hunting inside Yellowstone, and there is wolf hunting outside of it. Wolves have to live with people outside of Yellowstone, and that does create conflict. It is true to say that life is easier without wolves than with them, for the reasons I stated previously. They can compete with us for elk and deer, and they do occasionally kill dogs and livestock. And so they need to be managed outside the park, and that's okay. That's part of it. And there's some data, although other researchers are questioning this, that if species are hunted or if species that cause a problem can be immediately dealt with, social tolerance increases. So inside Yellowstone, we don't have to deal with those issues. We don't have to deal with issues of predation on pets or livestock, or taking elk inappropriately because I wanted to get that elk. So we have a different approach, but both approaches are okay and occur in different areas. So this is a very common situation for wildlife management across North America. Animals go over political boundaries and they're subjected to different management regimes, and that's the way it is, and that's okay for wolves too. Yes, wolves that live primarily in Yellowstone have been killed outside the park. This probably has not affected the population much numerically. One year we lost 12% of our population in 2012. This year we lost only 4 wolves. Last year we lost none. So the number of wolves taken is highly variable and generally below 3%, except that year 2012 where it reached 12%. And it probably didn't even at that level affect our population numerically. But what's important, and the reason my answer to that question was yes, is the Park Service mission is to manage for a natural population. Wolves are very social animals, so they have a social network that's important to how they function as a pack or a family. And we don't have as much information on that social functioning as we do about their population numbers. And we know that there is a harvestable surplus in terms of numbers, and that has not been exceeded so far for Yellowstone. But what's the impact on that pack? Or a second ranking individual? What does that do to pack dynamics? In one case, it caused the pack to split apart. Was that because that high-ranking individual was removed, or would that pack have split up naturally? Those are important questions for the Park Service to wrestle with, because even though that doesn't affect the numbers of wolves, it affects how wolves live on the landscape and function to themselves. And places like Yellowstone hold this dearly because most wolves across North America are impacted by people. And most biologists would argue at a sustainable level. We still have lots of wolves across North America, but we really don't know certain aspects about wolf life. And this social aspect is the one we know the least about. So if we're going to be managers of Yellowstone that pursue these ideals of naturalness, I think it's important to include all aspects. And so which wolves get removed and how that impacts the pack and the population, and importantly, the pack's relationship to each other, because they're always competing against each other. And if one pack loses some key individuals, we know that the individual makeup of packs affects how they compete with each other. It also affects how they prey on elk. We know big males are important to helping take down elk. So those are questions we're wrestling with. So to say removing wolf has no impact on the wolf population, you have to qualify what you mean. Are you talking numeric or are you talking social? And we're still looking for those issues, for those answers. Wolves are one of the most studied species in the world. Beginning in the late 1950s, they weren't. And because of the problems that are associated living with wolves, a lot of studies were kicked off in the 50s and 60s. And now they're one of the most studied animals on the planet. And so it's hard to advance your knowledge in that kind of arena. But Yellowstone has. There was a book published in 2003, which was a review of all the science done on wolves up to that point. And in the introduction to that book, the authors said, we've tried to include as much knowledge as Yellowstone has learned in the first few years, but Yellowstone holds the most promise to unlocking some of the wolves' secrets that are so far unknown. And I think Yellowstone has done that. And that's because, and this is somewhat controversial, we've had a good radio collaring record, so we're able to follow individuals and packs. The park is big, but it's more accessible than, say, Northern Canada or Alaska. And about half our population is viewed daily from the road. And this is an odd feature of recovery that I didn't think would occur. I thought wolves would be more secretive and shy, but we're getting information about pack dynamics, about individuals, about predation, about interactions with other species on a daily basis. And there's no other study in the world that's doing that. And then we do the traditional things, radio tracking, airplanes, genetics, drawing blood, looking at disease exposure, that all the other studies do. So you combine the traditional scientific methods with citizen science and daily observation and a public that loves to come here and see wild nature. And again, I can't overemphasize how important wolf recovery has been just to public enjoyment. Yellowstone is the best place in the world to view wolves, and people come here to do it, and that's immeasurably important to the park's goals and policies, that people see intact nature. So yeah, Yellowstone has changed the world's view of wolves. And we're in the news all the time. And I think having positive news out there about wolves, because to be honest, there is a lot of negative, because they're hard to live with. But having Yellowstone there, providing this positive, good news, has been very important, not only for Yellowstone, but what we know about wolves and the image of wolves worldwide.
Yellowstone is famous for huge explosive volcanic eruptions. There's really nothing brewing right now. The magma chamber is mostly solid, but there have been quite a few hydrothermal eruptions and small explosions in both Biscuit Basin and Norris Geyser Basin as water in the hydrothermal system flashes to steam. Curious new blue water pool formed in Norris Geyser Basin in late 2024 to early 2025 via a series of small explosions that threw out rock and excavated a small crater. This sort of activity is nothing new, as thermal features are commonly activating and going quiet across Yellowstone National Park. But it's a great reminder about how dynamic the system is, and also how important it is to have monitoring instruments in place. During the month of February 2026, the University of Utah seismograph stations, which monitors and operates the Yellowstone seismic network, located 74 earthquakes. The largest was a magnitude 2.4. Deformation measurements indicate a pause in uplift along the North Caldera Rim. Steamboat Geyser had one water eruption on February 27th, and nearby Aquinas Geyser, quiet since 2020, erupted about 40 times during the month. Yellowstone volcanoes remains at normal background levels of activity.
Hello, Rocky Mountain National Podcast listeners. We join you yet again for another great episode. A couple quick announcements before we begin. First, we have got a big pavement preservation project. So that means people are going around in the park and working on our pavement to keep it in good shape now and in the future. that's going on in the park and is going to be creating delays and closures over the next couple of weeks. Areas impacted are changing daily, so it's not just one area for the whole time. It's changing every day and are too complicated to cover in detail here, but you can get the full details on our website. Point your browser to nps.gov/ROMO. That's ROMO, nps.gov/ROMO. Look for alerts at the top of the page, and then find the alert related to pavement preservation and click more. That will take you to a news release that has the full details and a big old list to help you plan your trip. Second, monsoon season has been in full effect recently, with heavy thunderstorms rolling in nearly every afternoon. As always, please check the weather before your visit. Plan any hikes so that you are below tree line and away from dangerous areas before storms are set to arrive, and never leave the safety of a building or your car if thunderstorms are present. Stay safe out there. We know that thunderstorms are a common thing, and so it's easy to get complacent, but when you're here up in the high country and on the edge of rocky areas, people have been struck by lightning and even killed by lightning in Rocky, so please take it seriously. And now for our episode. This week we are joining Kyle Patterson, Rocky's Public Affairs Officer, to talk about what in the heck a Public Affairs Officer does, the importance of sharing Rocky's amazing news and messages with the news and with you, and current issues at the park, and also what you can do to help us keep Rocky beautiful now and in the future. It was a super fun episode. Kyle's really fun to talk to, and I'm sure that you're going to learn a lot of neat things and hopefully enjoy yourself. So here we go. Enjoy the show. Yeah, so the way it goes, it's very
Okay. Very good.
Just talk about whatever. Okay.
We can do that.
We can do that. All right, so what is your name and what do you do here at the park?
My name is Kyle Patterson, and I'm the Public Affairs Officer here at Rocky Mountain National
Public
Park.
Affairs Officer.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to try to use the listener's mind.
Perfect.
And think the way that they would think. What the heck is a Public Affairs Officer? What does that mean? What do you do?
What do I do?
What do you do?
And it depends on the day. That's
Yeah.
one of the reasons I love my job is
That's
what
true.
I do can vary greatly depending on the day. But my main job duties is media relations. So basically news releases for the park, proactive stories on different things that we do here at the park and our colleagues and the amazing things they do. And then some of what I do can be very reactive. So Rocky Mountain National Park is one of the top 5 search and rescue parks in the country. And so we all might have this perfect list of what we're going to check off that day. And then that gets changed very quickly and very dramatically with some of the incidents we have in the park. So some of what I'm sharing with the public as well is very reactive and highlighting some of the incidents that happen in the park and what our colleagues do to help folks, and also some of the preventative search and rescue messages so that hopefully if people are informed and educated and prepared, we won't have as many situations. So that's a big part of what I do is media relations. And then I also do a lot of community outreach. So giving presentations and programs to a variety of organizations and groups and members of the public and a variety of different forums.
Okay.
That's a big part of my life. And then I've got a lot of other duties as assigned as well.
So you're kind of the, are you the official voice of Rocky, or you're kind of the official word?
I
Is
am
that how it works?
I'm the official voice.
Okay.
Some people call me the mouth.
The
I'm not
mouth.
quite sure what that means or what, you know.
Maybe they're Lord of the Rings fans, like the mouth of Sauron. Are you a Lord of the Rings fan? Not that much. That's a little deep, yeah. Some of our listeners will get it. You're like the mouth of Sauron, except instead of a horrible, evil eye living on a tower, it's Rocky Mountain National Park. Much better job.
Much better job.
Yeah, much better job.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Can look myself in the mirror. You know, I'm not quite sure that
Right.
mouth could.
Yeah. No, definitely not. That's interesting. So the proactive versus reactive.
Right.
Yeah. So the reactive stuff is probably what people can imagine most easily. Like yeah, like you said, search and rescue. We've been posting some search and rescue videos and news releases and trying to summarize all of that sort of thing. What's that like when you hear about something going on, and then how does that whole process unfold? You
Right.
get called at like 4 a.m. and they say, Kyle, how's it going?
So it depends on the level of the incident, but I'll be notified anytime we have any kind of incidents in the park, just as more of a heads up.
Okay,
And
so you're basically getting calls every day.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And all hours of the day.
Uh-huh.
It depends. Certainly, fortunately, we don't have a lot of incidents that are happening overnight, but we certainly have incidents that start in the day and last overnight. And so a lot of it is, again, wanting to proactively share the stories of what our colleagues are doing to assist visitors that get into trouble or become injured. We have tragedies that happen in the park as well. So trying to share the story in a kind way as well is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that protects people's privacy and protects all sorts of things involved. Yeah, that
Right.
must be challenging.
It is challenging, and since our incidents vary so much depending upon what people are doing and where they are, some of our search and rescue incidents, in fact, most of them are, people doing the right things, being prepared, and just, having a horrible thing happen to them
Right.
somewhere in the park. And so usually it's not egregious that people are doing something and then things happen.
Yep.
And
There's objective risks
there
out here.
there are, and
that's
there's
part of why people come.
there are a lot of risks, and falls are the number one injury in Rocky, and they're the number one cause for fatalities in Rocky. Well, when you work and live in a place called Rocky Mountain National Park, rocks are not very forgiving.
No.
And I think also just through the years you realize how fragile we are as human beings when things happen.
Doesn't take
And
much.
it doesn't take much.
Doesn't even take that far of a fall.
No, it really doesn't. And so, certainly being try to be very professional and kind when sharing the story, and also knowing that this is a person that this has happened to, who have family and friends who, again, whether it's a tragedy, which fortunately we don't have very many when you think of the level of visitation we
That's
have
true.
in the park.
Yeah, as a percentage.
It's a percentage, it's really low. But then also just being mindful of some of the severe injuries we've had in the park and incidents we've had in the park as well. And so certainly those stories get a lot of attention. And we also have a lot of stories that we share with members of the public that aren't necessarily kind of those dramatic search and rescue incidents that people are just as interested in. So that's my favorite part of my job, is to be able to help tell those stories and help our colleagues tell those stories. Because even though I'm the spokesperson and the voice of the park, we've got a lot of amazing people, as you know, that work here that are very articulate, that do amazing things.
I mean,
and
that's
so
pretty much the genesis of this podcast idea is just being around park staff. You're just kind of like, wow, there's so many. They're just interesting people anyway, and their jobs are so interesting. And I think that's what can be challenging, just from the perspective of people even working here. It's hard for even us who work here to keep track of and recognize all the cool things that people are doing, because there's so much going on. Like, how many permanent employees do we have?
There is so much going on. We have about 160 permanent
year round, and then seasonal,
and then we have about 210 seasonal rangers.
So it's a big workforce.
It is,
and we're pretty spread out. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on at headquarters, but even there, people are out in the park. I hear about stuff all the time. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't hear about that.
Right.
So that sounds like the most fun part to me. I mean, the reactive thing that you're talking about, where you're reporting on incidents, kind of breaking news that people want to know about, is obviously very important and can take a lot of time. But yeah, that's neat thinking about it from like finding stories that are going on and finding ways to highlight them. And finding stories too, I feel like a lot of times you find stories that do that, but also educate at the same time.
Right.
Educate visitors. Could you talk a little bit about that part?
You bet. So, just the voices that we talk about too, and why it's great that we're having an opportunity to hear different voices through the podcasts, and just the experience level and passion that so many of our colleagues have. I love to be able to share those stories. And so it's great that we're using podcasts as another avenue to do that. That's my biggest regret, I think, at the end of each day, is not having enough time to be able to, oh, this is a cool story, I want to highlight this. This is a great story, I want to highlight this. And or trying to grab staff to help share those stories. But that's not their primary mission of their particular position.
Right.
So they're like, I'd love to talk about it, but
Yeah.
I've got to go
Right.
tackle non-native species,
Yeah,
or I have to go
exactly.
deal with, an elk in an exclosure. I
Right.
have to, and so
Right. It's
part
like,
of
can
it
I
is
get 3
just,
hours of your time? And they're like, no, I don't have it.
I would love to
working.
tell you my story. I don't
Yeah.
have time to tell you my
Exactly.
story. So if we
Especially in
can,
the summer.
absolutely. So if we can help gather some of that for people to tell the story, that's great. And we'll never have enough time to share the stories. And I mean, as I just sit here now and just think about all of our different divisions and all of our different work units and all of the different tasks that people have, it's mind blowing. I mean, we're basically a city.
We are. Yeah, I don't know if
And-
people realize. I was talking to, we had a class of designers, like graphic design, but also industrial design, which is interesting, who were here for a week. And I recorded with them like last Friday, I think it was. And that was one of the questions they had for me earlier. I just sat and talked with them, was like, what are all the different things people do here at the park? And it was hard for me to even remember, honestly. I would go through a big list, like, oh, we have interpretation, and then we have education, which is separate because it's curriculum based, and then we have law enforcement commissioned people, and then we have backcountry people and backcountry crews. But then I started thinking, I was like, wait, we have researchers like in all these different fields, and people managing elk, and people managing sheep and plants, and managing grants, and everything down to like sanitation and janitorial, which is so important. And I think people don't even think about it. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit.
Yeah,
But, well, actually, we could talk about it now. I mean, I think we have some challenges that are emerging at Rocky, so we can talk about some of those too. But definitely we basically are a city.
We are.
I mean, there's very few things that we don't do.
Right.
There's a few just because we have Estes Park and Grand Lake.
Right.
So we're not like when I worked in Denali or something where it's literally like you are your own services, period.
Right.
But we're pretty close.
We are. And we're really fortunate here that we have the amenities, like the lodging and the restaurants and all of that is in our surrounding communities. So that's one less thing that we have to be looking at as far as just an infrastructure aspect.
That's a good, you spend a lot of time working with gateway communities, right?
I do.
Could you talk about that?
I do. We're really fortunate at Rocky to have great relationships with our surrounding communities. And Grand Lake on our west side, Estes Park on our east side. And those partnerships are really, really vital to Rocky Mountain National Park. It's very much a symbiotic relationship.
It has to be.
In both kind of the tourism promotional aspect of both of those communities, as well as the town management of both of those. So we work closely with both the town management and the staff that help run the towns. And then also the tourism outlets of both of those areas as well, just to continue to make sure that, one of the common goals that we both have is to continue to make the visitor experience of our mutual visitors. Oftentimes they call them guests. We call them visitors. Just a little bit difference in semantics.
Yeah,
but
park service lingo versus town lingo.
Absolutely. And so part of that is making sure that we're doing the best we can for setting visitor expectations, and more with our significant increase in visitation, that becomes more and more important to set those visitor expectations and to really highlight that plan ahead message, and that things have changed here drastically over the last 5 years.
Yeah, and we have so much interface too with them. It just on a practical level, like in Estes Park with the shuttles. There's the town shuttles, and then our shuttles. And they overlap to some degree, and figuring out all of that, and messaging is a big one. I know. So we'll talk about some of the challenges facing Rocky. We'll talk about that. Before we do that, how did you become a public affairs officer? How did that happen? How did you get to? Because it's so interesting talking to. I feel like everyone we've talked to And I'm sure it will continue. It's just like,
Yeah.
how did we end up in these roles? A lot of times we don't even know until we think about it.
Ab-
But yeah, how did you get into public affairs?
Absolutely. You look back and say, this is exactly what I knew I wanted to do,
Uh-huh.
and I graduated. Well, I had no idea.
Uh-huh.
It's something that I have a marketing degree.
Uh-huh.
And so it's one of these situations where I knew that no matter what job I had, as I grew up, I wanted to be passionate about what I did.
Mhm.
And so I feel very grateful and fortunate that that's what I get to do every day.
Uh-huh.
But, certainly I was in the right place at the right time
Uh-huh.
with the right experience
Uh-huh.
that got my foot in the door.
Uh-huh.
And I started at Mount Rushmore
Oh, okay.
at a time when they were just completing a major redevelopment project.
Oh, was that when they did like that huge parking structure?
Yeah,
with the visitor
everything, everything was changed. The
Yeah,
visitor center,
huge.
the amphitheater,
Yeah.
presidential walking trail, their facilities of, again, their concession area
Yeah.
and their visitor
When did
center
that
and
happen?
then parking structure. So in the mid to late 90s. So it was
Okay,
all
yeah.
complete around
Yeah,
1998.
because I went, when was that? Early 2000s, and you can
Yeah.
tell that everything was kind of brand new.
It was
Brand spanking new.
brand spanking new.
Yeah. So you were there right
And
around that
I
time.
was there right in
Oh,
that
that must
during
have
that
been
time, so it
exciting.
was really exciting, and most of that was funded by their friends organization.
Okay.
And so pretty amazing that a lot of that was not
Wow.
actually used
That must
federal
have been a
funds,
ton of
but yeah,
money.
so there was a lot of outreach around that,
Mhm.
a lot of national media attention when all those changes were made, a lot of recognition of a lot of the donors that contributed to that.
Uh-huh.
And so, again, being in the right place at the right time with the right experience, I had a background of both public relations, special events coordination, and marketing in some financial institutions. So all of that mixed together got me in the door. And so
Uh-huh.
I was at Mount Rushmore for a couple of years,
Were
and
you
then
the
I've
public
been.
affairs officer
I
there as
was
well? Okay.
public affairs officer, and then I've been at Rocky for 16 years in this position.
Wow, okay. So you were there for a few years and then came here.
Came here,
Okay.
yeah. So that's kind of what got me in
Yeah.
the door. And
you're-
most national parks don't have public affairs officers. It's either a collateral duty that someone
Right.
else does on the side, but
Or it's one person for like a whole group of parks
yeah,
or something
yes.
like that.
But a lot of the larger parks like Rocky do have at least one person dedicated.
Yeah.
At least,
At
yeah.
least, yeah.
One person dedicated to a variety of the roles that we play here. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my story.
Okay. Okay, so you're at University of Wyoming in Laramie.
Yes, in business school. So
Freezing your
I
butt off and-
switched. I switched. The wind seems to follow me miles
Yeah,
wherever I
exactly.
go.
Yeah,
I
you
must
just can't
have
get
had
away.
an issue with wind
Laramie,
somewhere.
Black Hills, and then Estes Park. Okay.
So certainly Laramie and Estes has made me even stronger when it comes to
Yeah.
wind. But certainly it was still in the business school, and then I went into marketing
Uh-huh.
and seemed like a better match.
Yep, better fit.
And I think also then what do you do with a marketing degree? In
Sure.
a way, because there's some of
So
the
many things you could
possibilities
do,
are
yeah.
limitless.
Yeah.
And so again, that's when I was like, if I promote or highlight something, I want it to be something that I can feel really good about
Yeah.
promoting and highlighting.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, that's why I feel really
Yeah.
grateful because I'm so passionate about
Mhm.
the National Park Service mission as a whole.
Right.
And again, as we continue to see some of the challenges and opportunities that we have facing us here, I think it's another way too to just engage people at helping be part of the solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel the same way with my job, doing design and communication. It's great to be able to do something that you believe in and
Yeah.
has a purpose behind it that you can really get behind. And
Right.
I remember one of my one of my coworkers at Harper's Ferry Center who is a designer, and this is no slight to anyone who does this for a living. I'm just talking about her specifically. She was like, "Yeah, before I got this job, I was designing packages for like diapers, and now I'm doing design for National Park Service brochures. It's a different feeling."
Yeah.
And she was like, "That worked better for me." I was like, "Yeah, I can see that."
Right. Absolutely.
Same here. So
did you get a degree in graphic design? Is that what did you know you were going to be a graphic designer?
No, I did my
Is anybody asking Miles these questions?
No, but it's good. I'm glad. It's good. More back and forth. No, that's a good question. I was just like pretty much I didn't do any hiking stuff or outdoor stuff growing up. I just stayed inside and read books and played piano. And so I did piano and chorus and jazz band and marching band, just all music and stuff. And so when I went to undergrad, I went to this small liberal arts school in Kentucky called Center College, Bernice Center College alumni and associated people out there. My undergrad was in music composition and English.
Okay.
Double major.
Very good.
And then I started working in national parks between my junior and senior year. I don't remember how was it? Oh yeah, it was through. Do you know Colette Dagelberg? A lot of people know her. She works at Yellowstone. Anyway,
Okay.
her husband had this site called Coolworks, and it was like you could look for seasonal jobs. And the internet was getting into its own at that time. And I don't remember how, but somehow I was just like, wait, I can get a job in Yellowstone making minimum wage as opposed to going home for the summer making minimum wage. Okay, sign me up. Yeah, so I went out there and got hooked and started doing internships. And eventually, after a few years, I was like, everyone around me seems to have a degree related to what they're doing. Maybe I should too. And then I got a master's degree in environmental studies from University of Oregon. But I did like cartography and design. So graphic design is kind of what I ended up falling into.
Okay.
I definitely feel like it's very related to the music and literature and all that.
Yeah.
It's just like, how do you create balance? How do you create the right amount of tension? How do you make things exciting? How do you make things fit, and work well? And also communicating. You're communicating something. In the
Right.
case of literature and music, it's a lot more esoteric and artistic, I guess you would say. And in this case, we're usually communicating specific information.
Mhm.
But it's very similar. It's
Yeah.
like, how can I arrange these elements to make the clearest and most engaging communication possible?
Right.
So I totally kind of fell into it as well. I went to get that degree and started making maps. Took GIS classes.
Right.
And then someone was like, oh, you're pretty good at this. You should see about this cartography lab, see if they are hiring any students. And so I did, and they weren't hiring me because I already was TAing 16 hours a
Okay.
week, and you could only work 20 hours a week
Gotcha.
if you're a full-time student. But I got an internship working on Atlas of Yellowstone, which is like
Neat.
a 250 page, I think, or somewhere around there, atlas of everything about Yellowstone, like everything. Actually, it'd be great if we had one about Rocky too. And I'd worked at Yellowstone for a couple of years and done a ton of hiking and backpacking, so I knew the park
Right.
fairly well for
Right.
2 years. And so it all just kind of came together. And then when I was there, a cartography job at Harper's Ferry Center opened up because somebody had retired, and it was the first time they'd hired someone for that job in like 17 years.
Wow.
And I just
So
happened,
right
I just
place,
happened to
right
get it.
time,
Exactly.
right experience.
Yeah, for me, people ask me about it, like, how do I do that, and what's the path? And I'm like, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's being, just like you're saying, you're like, does this feel right or not?
Yeah.
And then exploring what does feel right and putting yourself into it like all the way.
Right.
And being really passionate about it. But anyway, that's kind of how it happened. Kind of a weird, I think that's, almost everyone.
Right.
Everyone so far that we've talked to, and I would guess almost everyone we talked to, will probably not have too straightforward of a story.
I know.
At least involved in national parks.
And I think that's part of it because we do get asked that question a lot. How
Yeah.
were you so fortunate to work at a national park?
Yeah, we wonder every day.
Yeah, and I think and for those that are also saying I would like to do that same thing. Sometimes it's hard because there isn't
hard to-
necessarily,
yeah.
and that's hard, especially for
is.
those that really want a position with the Park Service. There isn't necessarily if you do this, this, and this, then you will become this or become this, and so
And there's
sometimes
often-
that's tough. But then I think also the breadth of experience also hopefully adds to just life experiences
I
in
think so,
general
too.
for all of us.
Oh yeah,
If we were to
definitely.
look back and say that is not at all the path I think it's pretty rare for
I do
people to
too.
know exactly. I mean, you hear that.
It
You hear
happens,
of
for
people
sure,
saying,
in the parks.
when
It
I was in
happens.
4th grade, I knew I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Or when I was this, I knew that I wanted to
and they
do
follow
this,
through.
and they follow through. But
Yeah,
I think for most people, we're very fluid creatures.
especially in the Park Service, you
Yeah.
kind of have to be. And I don't know. It hasn't come up yet too much on the podcast. Maybe it will at a certain time, but I don't know too if people know the lifestyle things involved
Mhm.
sometimes. Like Lindsay Lewis, we were talking to in an earlier episode, or actually it'll be a later episode. Talking to Lindsay Lewis in a later episode, our volunteer coordinator, and just moving around all the time. And I did the same thing. and the amount of mobility that's almost required and the kind of places you have to live. And if it's your thing, then it's great.
Right.
But for a lot of people, it's not their thing.
Right.
It can be really challenging.
Right.
Especially in terms of like relationships
Right.
and family and trying to find a job.
Right.
Or, you know, and all those kinds of issues.
Yeah. Many
So-
times it's romanticized. And depending upon what stage you are in your life, you might be more able to do that. But then there
Yeah.
also becomes other times where you have relationships that you're separated from
Right.
because of it. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
it's not so romantic anymore.
There's so many different arrangements people have to figure. I mean, I know people who for years it's like, oh, I work at this park and my spouse works at this park, and we see each other every now and then on the weekends, or like not even every weekend. Or I'm like
Right.
at Grand Canyon. I know multiple people who they have a house in Flagstaff, but they live up in the park during the week. So it's just like, yeah, we see each other on the weekends, and people do what they have to do to make it work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's multiple angles to it. Maybe we'll have a lifestyle episode.
There you go.
Yeah, like a home and garden episode of, and just talk about all that stuff, because I think it would be really interesting to people.
Yeah.
We are going to, towards the end of the season, talk to seasonal employees.
Good.
Just about their season
Great.
and beginning, middle, end, wrapping up, and what the experience was like for them.
That's a
and
great idea.
How it's impacted them and that kind of thing. So we'll probably hear more of that stuff.
Yeah.
then. So you've been here 16 years,
Yes.
right, at Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yeah,
That's
16
a good.
years like this past week.
Oh wow!
I
Happy
know.
anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So
I'm not quite sure how 16 years happened that fast,
Oh,
Miles.
How's
that possible?
I'm still young. I'm 32, but I'm just starting. I mean, I definitely am perceiving this thing that everyone talks about. That is a cliche, but is so true. Which
Yeah.
is like time goes faster and faster.
Oh,
What's
yeah.
up with that?
Yeah. And
it's like how many years is it? What?
One of my favorites is, the days are long, but the years are short.
Yes.
And I think
that is so
I
true.
think that is like the first time I heard that. I'm
That
like,
is so
that
true.
is it in a nutshell
And
sound
especially in a
bite.
position like yours, I think, because things just, just like a couple weeks ago, we had 5 incidents in a day.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
just, it can seem to go on a really long time, but then afterwards,
Yeah.
it's just like, what happened?
Exactly.
What happened to that day?
And we have so many stories and incidents in the park that we don't even have a chance to do news releases
know.
on them too. I
know.
think that sometimes the public is like, oh, you had a string of them and then you haven't had any since.
Right.
Just
No.
for instance, this week we had another day like that, but none of us had a chance to
Right.
put a news release together.
Exactly.
But we had 3 major incidents at Wild Basin on the 4th of July. A
Yeah.
broken hip on
Broken
one
hip.
trail and a broken leg on the other trail. We didn't send out a news release about
Wow.
it. So when people ask me, is there something going on in
Always.
Rocky? I say, I'm sure there is. It's just a
Yep.
matter of whether we know about it yet or
Yep.
not.
It's almost 250,000 acres. It's 4.5 million visitors last year, right? Just
Yes.
over.
Just over, yeah.
So you've been here 16 years. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
You've had lots of experience in one place. How
Mhm.
have things changed from your
Right.
perspective over that 16 years?
Right.
Because I've been here a little over 2 years and it's changed
Right,
a lot.
right.
So I can't even imagine 16 years. Like how the park and town too,
Right.
because that's another thing people tell me. They're like, "Oh man, you should have been here 20 years ago. You couldn't get a cup of coffee in the winter." So that's obviously changed. But how have things changed over those 16 years?
There's been a lot of changes.
Uh-huh.
And what's refreshing also is that a lot of the stuff stays the same.
Mm.
So I think we had an opportunity to reflect quite a lot in 2015 when the park celebrated its 100th anniversary.
Right.
To really, big anniversaries give you an opportunity to honor the past,
Mhm.
which was part of what we were highlighting, and also, celebrate the present and inspire the future. Those were the three taglines we had. And so when you look at just how much our world has changed in a blink of an eye, really, when it comes to technology, when it comes to global aspects and all that, it is refreshing to really see that the reasons that people come to Rocky Mountain National Park are the same as what they were
Right.
50 years ago, 100 years ago. So to me, that is a wonderful thing.
I agree.
Because I don't know that very many other places, very many organizations, very many entities would really look at that, because I think that most of them would say, as a result of this and technology and this and these
Right.
pressures and et cetera, the people are coming here for the same reason: scenic grandeur,
Mhm.
watchable wildlife, and amazing recreational opportunities.
Mhm.
So if you were to look back at photos from 75 years ago, it's the same exact thing.
Same.
The the photos might look a little different.
Cars
the
look a
gear,
little different.
The cars look a little different. The attire and the
Yeah.
gear looks a little different.
Yep.
But other than that, people were coming here for the same reason. So
Mm-hmm.
and you also wonder too, with just the fast-paced lives that we all live,
Yeah.
the being connected all the time, the pros and cons of that,
Mm-hmm.
that more and more it just continues to emphasize why national parks are so important.
Yeah.
Because we need places
Yeah.
to have respite. We need places to disconnect. We
Mhm.
need places to listen to natural sounds. And you don't know how much you need those places until you're out in them. And
Yeah.
there's like tons and tons of research that highlights that. I mean, that
Absolutely.
demonstrates that even 30 minutes sitting on a rock in nature brings your blood pressure down.
Well,
I mean, that's
it's interesting when I was
fascinating.
talking to those University of Kansas students.
Yeah.
They were all, young. They're all undergrads, and some of them had camped before, but most of them had not camped for like a week.
Yeah.
They stayed at Marine Park Campground
Yeah.
the entire week, so they didn't,
That was their
no
experience,
electricity. No,
right.
that was their experience. And even though that's a developed campground and all of that, yeah, just talking to them, interviewing them, people will hear on that podcast episode. Yeah, it just had a huge impact. They're just like, I don't know, just after a few days, I just feel so different. And
Interesting.
I have
That's
different
great.
creative ideas coming to me because unlike indoors where things are kind of under control and the only new things that happen are what you make happen, out here stuff just happens.
Right.
The weather changes, animals move, things, the light, everything
Right.
is always changing. I could just tell it was like very impactful and important for them. And I agree with you
Yeah.
totally. It's so easy now to get caught up in your phone and caught
Right.
up in the computer and caught up on TV. And
Right.
it's just like there's a never-ending stream
Right.
that you can be plugged into.
Right.
And so it's nice that our mission has stayed relevant, or like you said, maybe become even more relevant.
Right.
So that stayed the
Exactly.
same,
Yeah.
which is great. We're
Right.
supposed to be here forever. So
Right, exactly.
yeah, that's the goal.
Well, and I think as different things happened in just the 16 years that I've been here, whether it's had a lot of major incidents that have happened here, it's the things that people said after 9/11 in 2001 that people sought out coming to the park because they
Oh, really?
needed to get
Interesting.
away from the news, they needed to get away from the constant bombardment of what happened
Yeah.
to people on
The
that
news
day.
tickers
And so
Huh.
it was interesting right after that people, flocked here because it was like, the mountains are calling for me just to remove myself from what's going on and find peace
I
somewhere.
hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
it
a little bit before I was in the Park Service, so it was
Yeah.
noticeable.
Oh, it was very noticeable. Very
That's amazing.
noticeable.
So it was
Yeah.
like a place where people could come
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and have some space
Yeah.
to like heal.
Exactly.
Huh.
And
Wow, that's amazing.
and there's a number of stories out there, very moving stories that people have shared about coming here right after that time period that,
Huh.
brings tears to your eyes because it was a conscious decision that they said, I need to get away from what is happening right now.
Mhm.
And so where can I go? And they came here.
Mhm.
And so to me, that just emphasizes again why we need to
Absolutely.
preserve and protect this place.
Absolutely.
Because there's been a lot that's happened in our world the last 100 years since Rocky's been here. And
Yep.
so you can imagine that people came here after World War II. People
Sure.
came here for so many different reasons to find, peace and tranquility.
Huge growth in
and-
parks after World War II.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. So, the mission has stayed
Yeah.
the same.
Right.
What has not stayed the same
Uh-huh.
is our level of visitation.
Yeah.
And
Just the sheer
so
number of
the
people.
sheer number of people. And Rocky has always been one of the most popular parks.
Sure.
But what's happening in the last 5 years is we're seeing this rapid increase in visitation, 40% over the last 4 years, 32% over the last 2 years. So we now in 2016 were 4.5 million visitors. In 2015, we became the third most visited park. And then in 2016, Yosemite leaped over us again, and we were the fourth
We were close.
most visited
We're-
national
yeah.
park. Yeah. And so there's lots of reasons for that. Most of it has to do with population growth along the Front Range.
Yep. It's booming.
It's booming,
You
and
tell
some of
every
the
time you go down there.
fastest growing counties are literally either in our doorstep or on our doorstep. And so when a lot of people are moving to Colorado because they want to recreate in
Sure.
places like this. It's what calls to them. And so we're handy, head straight up. And
Yep.
so that's a wonderful problem to have. And
Yeah,
I
it
use
is.
air quotes with problem because a lot of folks might say, well, hey, that's better than apathy. That's better than
Yeah,
people not
totally.
enjoying. And hopefully those people will become or are already supporters, stewards, protectors, and help us preserve this place as well.
And a shared experience,
And a shared
too, which I think is
experience.
cool. People
Absolutely.
all over Colorado can, oh, you've been to Rocky? I haven't. That's kind of a communal thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So in that case, yeah.
So, our visitation continues to spike dramatically.
Yeah.
And if you look over, you look in the past as far as our visitation levels over the years, it seems to, there's patterns of it increasing and then plateauing and then increasing and plateauing. So that's been part of our past. We're now at a point, again, where we are significantly increasing. When and if that's going to plateau, I don't know that we can continue to deal with the level of visitation increases that we're seeing.
Yeah.
I don't think that we can continue to see 32%, 32. I just don't know that that's possible because of just the infrastructure.
It's physically possible.
Physically possible for that many people to arrive in the park and all that. So I don't know that we're going to continue to see that dramatic growth just because of logistics.
Yeah, just limitations.
Yeah, limitations. Even before we take any actions, just limitations in general. But certainly, as we look into the future and we look at just this dramatic increase over the last couple of years, record visitation every year, the last 4 years, record visitation every month of the year. So maybe our old model was Memorial Day through late September.
Yeah.
We now know that model is completely out the window.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing record visitation every month of the year. And it's not just Rocky. Public lands in general in Colorado are seeing, huge increase in visitation and then some of the impacts related to that.
Yeah.
So certainly that's been a significant change over the last 4 years and this rapid growth that you just can't keep up with. So in 2015, we were completely on our heels. That year, we had a 21% increase in 1 year. And although visitation continues to go up, our staffing does not.
Yep.
And so after a while...
And that's something that surprises people. Almost everyone I tell that, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, we have either equal or even less staff than we've had in the past with way fewer visitors.
Exactly. We have less staff now.
Yes, despite having way more visitors.
Yeah.
Like
so
millions more.
Yeah, we have less staff now than we had 8 years ago.
Yep.
And so, that's something that we as a leadership team need to continue to address because our colleagues' well-being is extremely important. And we need to make sure that we're keeping that in mind. And so as we continue to, deal with some of the challenges and steps we're taking now, we're looking at 4 areas. That visitor and staff safety is extremely important to us. Resource protection.
So that resource, when we say resource in Park Service, we mean like the park at every level.
Absolutely.
So the physical part, the view sheds, the quality of the night skies, the quality of the soundscape, the cultural and historical landscape. That's all. When we say resource, we mean all of that.
Right.
Okay. So resource protection.
And then just, wildlife habitat, everything is kind of surrounded into that.
Yes. Everything involved.
And then visitor experience.
Yep.
So what kind of experience are visitors having with this level of visitation? And then operational capacity. Like truly what can our infrastructure take? Whether it's restroom facilities in Bear Lake, whether it's our trail system, whether it's our roads, all of our infrastructure. What can our infrastructure, operational capacity take with this level of visitation?
Right.
And so those are the kind of 4 overarching areas that we started moving forward in 2016, looking at all of those things and taking some short-term steps, and then also, realizing and knowing that we're also starting the long-range planning efforts as well.
Yeah.
And it's going to take all of us to come up with the solutions and also potentially make hard decisions. And again, when you think about the mission of the Park Service, that dual mandate, very, very difficult balancing act.
Yeah,
the whole preserving and protecting for future generations and then providing for recreational opportunities now. I mean, in a nutshell, it's a little bit more involved than that.
Yeah, but that's basically
truly
it. Yeah.
what the balancing act is.
For listeners, if you look up the enabling legislation for the Park Service, you'll see, that it's protecting, basically.
Right.
But also providing for the enjoyment of. And sometimes, as you can imagine, those things can come into direct conflict because for example, let's say that it's enjoyable for people to have 10,000 people around Moraine Park in like stadium seating watching elk. But that is not the best thing for elk.
Right.
And maybe not the best thing for those people. Maybe
Right.
that's not protecting their experience in a certain way. So
Right.
that's just one example, but it's just the constant,
It is.
I don't know if I want to say conflict, but paradox or
Right.
or dual goals that we're
Yes.
always working under.
Exactly. Sometimes it's more of a dilemma than others.
Yeah, and I felt like it's hard, not just here, but with other parks that are experiencing really high visitation. And like you said, it's not necessarily the hard number that matters as much. It's like the capacity.
Right.
You know, what capacity are we at in terms of restrooms, in
Right.
terms of parking spaces, in terms
Right.
of, and yeah, I feel like, there's other parks, Zion,
Right.
Yosemite, Yellowstone, Grand Canyon, Smokies, and there's a lot more than that, and us. And it, to me, is difficult. It's almost like an identity crisis, because for years, I feel like with parks, it was, we need to get more people out to the parks because we want more people to see how amazing they are and to have that experience and enjoy their public lands and their heritage. And even to the point where I remember, like at Black Canyon, the Gunnison, for example, when I worked there, it's very quiet in
Right.
the winter, which is great if you live up there and you like it to be quiet. But on the other hand, we're always kind of like, oh, why don't more people come up here and realize how amazing it is? Well, now at Rocky, they are. People are coming in the winter.
Right.
Winter weekends, parking will get full. Like, it happens a lot.
It does.
And they're coming in the fall, and they're coming in the spring. They're coming in these less or more challenging weather times,
Right.
but that also have their own beauty, which is great. It's just also like, oh my gosh.
Well, and we hear from
What do we do?
visitors that say that they're not coming anymore, too.
Yeah,
Because
and that always
of
makes me
the
sad.
level of visitation. So
Yeah.
that's another thing we need to be looking at, is also making sure that not only are we providing an experience for visitors now, and that's a hard thing to hang your hat on, because what you think is a valuable experience and what I think is a valuable experience might be very, very different.
Absolutely.
And we see that all the time with our visitors. What some person considers as crowding, if they're from, a rural setting, or their mindset is this
Mhm.
is going to be their experience. And if somebody comes maybe from an urban situation and they feel more comfortable when there's
Right.
lots of people around.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to say, what's the visitor experience? Well, it's so individual.
It is.
But I think we also have to acknowledge that we continue to hear from people that are, I'm not coming back, or I just came there and I hadn't been there in 5 years, and it was, a very
crazy.
different situation, crazy. I did not enjoy it. I think those are all conversations we need to have, so that we have to remember that we are a national park. So we have to take all of those voices and feedback in mind as we continue to think through how we move forward. And it's not just about all of us.
No.
It's about those that are coming here 30 years from now, about our
Exactly.
grandkids and nieces and nephews, and all of these generations that, those that came before us.
Yeah.
We would have been pretty ticked off at them if they wouldn't have taken
Absolutely.
care of this place. And so we also need to take ownership as a country, as a community, as a however you want to say it. We also have to take that ownership to say, how are we leaving this for folks that are going to come 30 years from now? And the decisions that we make now
Yeah.
are going to make
Right.
a significant difference in
Right.
that. And so that's a
So,
big part of what
yeah.
we're needing to address.
So on our end, on the park end, we have all sorts of stuff going on right now to
We do.
look at, just trying to get baselines, basically,
Right.
of what visitation is, what are the patterns, what do people want out of their experience, what are they looking for, kind of collecting data, correct?
Right.
And then we're using that data to begin well-informed, to basically inform our discussion internally and then with the public, to just say, this is what's happening. These
Right.
are the facts on the ground. These are the pros and cons, and what do we want to try to do in the future to figure it out. And for me, I think it's a little scary because we don't know the answer, but it's also exciting because we don't know the answer. And we're
Right.
trying to figure it out with people.
Right.
And I think, one thing with this podcast that I want people to be able to experience, having these conversations that are just very straightforward and very non-formal and very, like this, is that we are not trying to make rules to like kill anyone's fun. Like everyone I talk to in the park, we got into parks because we love parks,
Right.
and we love visiting parks, and we love we love it so much we wanted to live in a
Right.
park.
Right.
And so we totally get that, and we want people to have the best vacation or whatever
Right.
personal growth experience or whatever
Right.
their experience is. So, but the reason we do have regulations is because that protect side.
Right.
You know, we're trying to protect it, like you said, for future generations forever.
Right.
So what are some of the things, the key things with this growing visitation that we are asking visitors to be aware of and
Okay.
to do that can help us?
Right.
Help us help them. Help me help you.
Exactly. So there are a variety of things, and one is just continuing to do things like this, where we engage and connect with visitors to help us come up with some of the solutions
To hear their
and
voice.
to hear their voice and informing each other as well. So we took short-term action the last couple of years because we had to. You know, as I mentioned, we were completely on our heels in 2015. Saw the ramifications of that, not only on the resource, but on visitors and staff.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of just the crowding. So we started putting restrictions in place along the Bear Lake Road Corridor, Wild Basin, and Alpine Visitor Center, which are our three main congested areas, starting in 2016. And there was not some magical time on the clock on Saturday that we said, okay, every Saturday at 10:18, it's meant to be very fluid, and we're moving forward with
And it's
those
safety-based,
restrictions
right?
this year.
I think people need to understand that it's safety based.
Right. It's
It's
safety-based.
like, for example, I mean, if there's just miles of cars in every direction, and something happens,
Right.
let's say it was someone you're hiking with,
Yeah.
and we need to get an ambulance up there.
Right.
We can't get an ambulance up there
Right.
because it's so crowded, and so
Right.
that was part of it, right?
That's
Is we
it.
just were saying this
Right.
is becoming unsafe.
Right. There are lots of parts of it. So that is one of the main reasons. And
Yeah.
we had examples in past years where we literally could not get emergency vehicles down in areas or to areas because of the sheer congestion along the roads
Right.
and the way people had parked that we could not get, and it absolutely impacted our response time.
Yep.
And so that's a big part of why we made these decisions. And places like Wild Basin Road, which is a dirt, narrow road
Yeah.
that leads down to the Wild Basin Trailhead.
Yep. Got to
All
use
it
pullouts
takes
to pass people a lot of the time.
all it takes is, a couple of people parking because they can't find a legitimate parking space, so they park somewhere, and now the back of their vehicle is out in the middle of the road, and they leave their vehicle, head in to go hike, and then, just trying to get around and maneuver around those vehicles, again, in emergency vehicles.
Or just other visitors.
visitors.
It's a consideration for everyone else.
Yeah, and if we had to evacuate an area
Uh-huh.
because of fires, that's also, a
Interesting.
concern as well, because
Mhm.
you have all of these people that are kind of down a narrow dirt road. So these are all things we have to keep in mind. And then just the resources. So once parking areas filled up, once legitimate parking spots filled up, we were seeing that, unfortunately, visitors were parking on the resource in places that you would not have thought was even possible.
Right.
And so we were seeing significant resource damage and impacts as a
like the
result of
vegetation
that.
and things
Vegetation,
like that.
yeah.
Where
And,
just the sides of the road start looking like baseball fields or something. They're just dirt.
Exactly. So then there goes the whole aspect that we are required to provide as far as resource protection, that native vegetation, other aspects of just what happens to wildlife when you have that many people in an area. So again, we took steps with that in mind, and then just truly what our facilities could stand. So when there's that many people in that area, even if we had a custodian cleaning the bathroom every 30 minutes, the condition of our facilities were very, very poor just because of the volume of people that were there.
Yep.
So for all of these reasons and many more, we started restricting vehicle access. So when parking areas fill and the congestion warrants along the roads starting to become an unsafe situation, then we start putting restrictions in place. Last summer, that was June through September, every weekend is when it usually happened. And the same thing has been happening this year as well, and it's actually moved into some weekdays.
Really?
as well,
Wow.
just because of our level of visitation.
Yeah.
Same,
because we've been setting some new records, right?
same,
Like,
same challenges of Alpine Visitor Center.
Yeah.
So, we got 2 roads that now with Old Fall River
right,
Road
Old Fall
open
River
for
Road
the
empties
season.
into the
So you
Alpine
got
Visitor Center
2
parking lot.
roads that empty, and all it takes is a couple people wanting to turn into that visitor center from Trail Ridge Road, and you soon have backups for miles as a result of that. So those are all things that we're trying to tackle best we can, but you have to kind of intensively manage those areas too. And in 2016, we actually had less complaints because we took those steps in. In
good.
fact, we had a lot of people that reached out to us and said, finally,
Really?
if you plan ahead, you can get into these areas.
So it helped.
So it helped. And I think also we
great.
saw a lot of belligerence amongst visitors. And so that, with putting those restrictions in place, that helped ease some of that
just
belligerence
helps keep you out
and
of
crowding.
a situation that you can't win.
Right.
Like,
Right.
like if you're driving around looking for parking and it isn't there, you're just going to get frustrated.
Yeah,
And
right.
I can understand
Exactly.
that for sure.
So a lot of it is helping us better inform the visitor. So a lot of that too is, again, really trying to convey the plan ahead message. So many of our visitors are return visitors. They come here year after year, or maybe they haven't been here for 5 years. Their experience is very different than the way they remember it 5 years ago. We also have a lot of visitors that are coming up here for the first time. They jump in their car on a Saturday at noon, and then their world is rocked when they get up here and realize that our entrance station lines are long and there's no parking. So a lot of what we've been trying to do for the last 3 years is really doing as much as we can to encourage people to plan ahead. We realize that there's going to be visitors that don't do any planning ahead, and they're extremely spontaneous, and I envy that. I wish I was that spontaneous. But really, other parks, I believe, other parks have put in their catch lines, do not be spontaneous when coming to a national park, particularly May through October.
Yep, not a busy one, yep.
Yeah. And so I think that that's a lot of, if people do truly plan ahead, look at some of the tips that we have on our website and
got it on the homepage.
On the
right
homepage, it really, really does make a difference. And we realize that people are listening, so we always did that hike early. Well, no surprise, we knew this was going to happen, that people are now coming here earlier, and so that means our parking lots are going to fill up earlier. So I know that some parks say come prior to 7 or after 6 p.m. That might be part of our future here
Because we
at
have
Rocky.
been saying 10 to 3,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's
well,
shifting.
It is, but we say, that 10 to 3 is that crunch time. So the earlier people come or the later people come outside of that 10 to 3, they'll have more success and they'll have a more pleasant experience.
Yeah.
And we continue to see this huge influx on weekends.
Yep.
So if people could even just tweak their schedule and come on a weekday, even in July,
In the summer,
weekday, it helps a little bit. But
weekends, in the fall, it's huge.
Yeah,
I mean,
huge.
I get that it's hard for people in the fall because kids are in school and blah, blah, and all of that. But yeah, the fall here.
Right. We have about 50% higher visitation on weekends in the fall than we do weekdays. And that's changing a little bit too. But it's some of our busiest days for the year are weekends in the fall because it's a glorious time to be here.
So before 10, depending on your trailhead, maybe
even earlier than
8,
that.
7, almost 6 for some trailheads.
Exactly.
And then after 3.
Right.
And I definitely see that to be true because I'll come in after work sometimes and it's a lot less busy.
So those are
weekdays, over weekends if you can.
Right.
Okay.
And then, again, just the whole concept of carpooling, using the shuttle system. And
our shuttle system is great.
It is great. And our shuttle system's been around since the 70s. Our shuttle system, got improved in the early 2000s. We started our shuttle system, worked closely with the town of Estes Park. They were able to, take advantage of the shuttles being in this area to also then expand the shuttle program within the town of Estes Park. And then we have the hiker shuttle that's a park shuttle that runs from the Estes Park Visitor Center up to Bear Lake.
Which has a new parking garage.
And there's a new parking garage there.
So more spaces there.
And the shuttles run every 30 minutes. So again, people need to set the expectation that those buses only run every 30 minutes. So there is a very good possibility, again, if they're here on a busy weekend, that they might stand in line for that hiker shuttle for more than an hour before they can ride into the park.
Which can be a little, it can feel frustrating, but the other thing that I kind of like about it sometimes number one, you get to meet people and talk to people, which is kind of fun. Number
Right.
two, if you weren't doing that, you would be sitting in your car trying to negotiate traffic
Absolutely.
that hour. And then when you do get to go into the park, you can just enjoy the view and not worry about finding a
Right.
place to park.
Right.
So
Exactly. And
yeah.
there are some advantages, and we also try to highlight at the hiker shuttle if they are coming between that 10 and 3 period, and our restrictions are in place, and so that's the only way they can get up Bear
Right.
Lake if they're really focused on going to Bear Lake, is, go walk around Lake Estes, go into town and have lunch, come back and get on the hiker shuttle, say at 3 or later. Then they won't have as
you're gonna have a
long
way
of a
different-
wait time.
Yep.
And so again, it's setting realistic expectations, just like anywhere else we go.
Mhm.
Whether we're going to, anytime we travel, if we can set realistic expectations for people. I know that when I travel, I want people to be straight with me and say, this is how long this is going to take.
Yep.
This is, rather than, oh, everything is just fine.
Mhm.
There was a big thing of lightning that came down over
Nice.
Prospect Mountain.
Pretty close. All right.
So I don't know if we want to, we could finish it in the car.
Yeah, we could wrap up in the car so we don't get
Yeah, let's do
electrocuted,
We're coming
lightninged, fried. I'll pick this little baby up.
There you go.
Right, so we've got the shuttle bus system. Definitely take advantage of it. Sometimes it is your only option,
Right.
but
It
even
is.
even when it's not, I often will use it just because I find it less stressful.
Right. Right. And, something that we often get asked is that we've been asked either just have it be bus access only into Bear Lake Road Corridor. We've also been asked oftentimes, why not more buses? Why don't you run buses every 5-10 minutes? And buses are certainly a great tool to move people. But as soon as you start using buses, then your capacity changes greatly. So the trailheads and the parking areas were the former capacity to these areas. But if you continue to increase shuttle access to areas, then you just surge, oftentimes, users into the area. And we've learned from our colleagues in other national parks like Zion that buses, also provide challenges. Where even with the frequency of buses that they're running, they still have pretty significant wait times as a result of it. So shuttles are a great tool to use, but they're not the only tool that we can
Right.
use here at Rocky. And they also, cost money. So funds that we would be using towards shuttle buses is very limited as far as our entrance fees. And so it would certainly be part of the overall plan to see what funding would be available. And that would be a side note as far as just looking at the capacity and what resource impacts you would have if you continued to just surge people.
Right.
And then what's the visitor experience? If
Right.
you happen to be at a trailhead or getting off a bus with 40 other people, is that the experience that you're looking for when you're hiking into the park?
Yeah.
So these are all things that we have to look at when we look at how we're going to use shuttle
Right.
buses as a tool.
Right. So before 10, after 3, use shuttle buses as a tool. Any other things that tips we can give people to help have the best visit possible?
The whole concept of hike early, hike late is really key. And if people do decide to hike late, they really need to be dialed into the weather forecast.
Yep.
That will make a big difference.
Yep.
And truly just what time they will be coming out. Is it going to be dark?
Yeah.
If it is, then they need to make
Prepare.
sure that they are prepared for
Yeah.
that.
And
Whether it's
comfortable with
being really dialed into the route and not going off trail, which we don't encourage anyway.
Yeah.
And then also just making sure, you have headlamps and things
Yeah.
like that as you're coming
Yeah.
out. So you have to look at your hike very differently if you are going in later in the day.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely check the weather forecast.
Right.
It's our typical pattern here to have afternoon thunderstorms
Right.
every afternoon. We're not always in that pattern, but a lot of times we are. We just ducked inside because of that very pattern, because lightning started. So, yeah, that's definitely one thing to think about, because especially a lot of our hikes go above tree line. You don't want to be above tree line if there is lightning anywhere around. So watch that really carefully. But as long as you do watch the forecast, hiking in the evening is great a lot of the time, especially when this light's long in the summer. Okay, so that's a good tip. Hike
Exactly.
early, hike late.
And then the other thing, again, as you're planning ahead and thinking about your destination, is that 80% of our visitors come in through the east side of the park. 20%
Estes
from
Park
the
side,
west side.
80%. Wow.
Yeah. So, and which would make sense when you think
Sure,
about the
populations.
populations and Denver International Airport and elsewhere. But certainly, if people want to just know that fact when it comes to planning, they might choose, you know, what entrance they come in based on where they're coming from or their interest in what they're looking at. So that's just
we have
some
the whole
additional
west side of the park.
information. Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think the other is camping, which we know, but
This one
if
surprises
people want
people,
to
I
camp
think.
in the park, we've got 3 reservation campgrounds, 2 first come first serve, and those 3 reservation campgrounds are booked 6 months in advance.
Yep. So that's
part of
Aspen Glen, Glacier
Marine Park,
Basin, and Moraine Park, right?
Yep, exactly. So
Booked
people
6
just
months in advance.
Yeah. So if people want to camp, they really need to book those reservations, and it's good. Then you know you have a place.
Right. And you can do that online.
You can
You
do
can
that
go
online.
online
So
and
mark
it's-
your calendar, and it's
You can
6
pick
months
your
prior
exact
to,
spot, see it on a map, get all, you know,
And
plan
that's-
way ahead.
And that's pretty typical, not only for Rocky, but
Yeah.
most other
Sure.
public lands and federal lands in this
Absolutely.
area.
Especially in this area.
Yeah. And first come, first serve, you know, certainly if people want to roll the dice and
Right.
and hope that they can get one of those first come, first serves, Timber Creek Campground on the west side
Yep.
is the campground that fills up last.
Uh-huh.
So that's just some other tidbits. And we already talked about the significant difference between weekend versus weekday visitation. And then the last thing too is people can purchase their pass online.
Uh-huh.
So if they're wanting to take the hiker shuttle, an entrance pass is required for that. People can purchase that online. If they're coming into the park, they can purchase the pass online. It doesn't speed up your time in the actual line. So some
Right.
people are like, well, if I do this online, do I have to be in the entrance station lines? Yes,
For
you
now,
do.
you do. Yep.
You do. But the big thing to remember is just that it should shorten your transaction time.
Yes,
So
most definitely.
rather than handing the person in the one of our colleagues in the booth your credit card, going through that whole thing, you just basically can show on your smartphone that you've purchased the
And
pass.
then
So
they'll say, here's your brochure, here's your
Exactly.
newspaper.
So
you're
it
good to go.
does speed up the transaction time at the booth. So that would make a difference. The more and more people that use that,
Yeah.
then the quicker the
Yeah.
lines
And for
will
people
go.
who want to do that, if you go to our webpage, just search Rocky Mountain National Park, it'll come up. It's on the front page, fees and passes, and you can go right there. It'll take you straight to a form. You can fill it out all online.
Yes.
Works well.
Yes, works very well. So that's just another tool
Great.
that people can use.
Awesome. Anything else that we should cover?
I think
Because I have one final question, and then we'll be
Okay.
done.
Very good. I think the other thing that we could spend a lot more time on, that maybe we can talk about at a future time, but the plea to continue to ask visitors to help us protect this resource.
Yes.
And we have seen, you know, this increase in visitation, and I think a big part of what we talk about is that most of our visitors are here for all the right reasons. They love this place. They want to protect this place. They have this amazing sense of place when they come here, that they want to protect it. We are seeing, though, more and more behavior that we're really concerned about, that we're seeing increase. Now, it's probably the same percentage of visitors,
Right.
but now when you're at 4.5 million, that same percentage of visitors is going to have more impact.
What kind of behavior?
So we're seeing, you know, a number of behaviors that either are tied to people not knowing or not caring. And so what we'll all just have to continue to work on as best we can is the behavior that people just don't know about. It's the first time that they've been to a national park.
Yep, all sorts of new stuff.
All sorts of new stuff, you know, continuing to highlight that these are special places. We want to keep them special places. National parks are not meant to be all things for all people. They're not multi-use places like some of our colleagues in other areas
We have a lot of that land in the United States.
We do.
That's just not what national parks.
Right. So U.S.
That's not why we were
Forests,
created.
U.S. Forest Service, you know, they have amazing places where they are multi-use, where
BLM
people
too.
can do a variety of more activities than they can in national parks.
Yep.
So we do have those
And
places.
we have a lot of Forest Service land in Colorado.
We do.
Like 13 million acres, something like that. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. We have a lot. And so I think, you know, continuing to highlight that national parks are special places, and some of the behavior that we've seen increase, we talked a little bit about before, as far as just parking challenges, that when we have crowding and when people don't have parking spaces, we continue to see people be extremely creative with where they're parking in the park, whether it's on, native vegetation, whether it's on the tundra, whether it's blocking other cars in, whether it's, in ditches and near streams and rivers. And so that's a concern for us. And, again, really trying to highlight that, even though somebody might consider this, well, it's just grass, it's not just grass, it's native vegetation. All it takes is one car. And, we're in a very unique habitat that stuff doesn't grow here that quickly.
No.
And so ripping it out with tires, et cetera, or putting hot cars on top of grass also can present a whole nother set of challenges when it comes to, like catching on fire.
In the summer.
Yes.
Yep. I've definitely heard of fires started that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And so parking in established, developed parking areas, we need to continue to just get as much help as we can from the public on that. Speaking of fires, we're seeing in the last couple of years extreme concern for park staff, and that we've seen a huge increase in the amount of illegal campfires in Rocky Mountain National Park. And so that not only concerns us, but it obviously concerns our communities that surround us.